Welcome to Thursday, June 7th, 2018, council meeting.
Beta Club. Katie is also an accomplished actress and singer, spending 4 years in Thespian Troupe 775 and in the choir, and soon will be following the Passion at LSU in the fall as a music ed major. Katie is accompanied by her parents, Suzanne and Kaylin Camden, her little brother, Saddle High Principal Billy Percy, and Amy DiCardo, the Central Office Supervisor. Katie, would you lead us in a pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Katie. And next, Mr. Lorino, I believe you have a guest.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Monsignor Frank Giora. But first, I'd like to just say a few things. Following his graduation, the Monsignor from Archbishop Rummel in 1973 attended St. Joseph Seminary and Notre Dame Seminary and ordained in 1981. Monsignor served as associate pastor of the Resurrection of Our Lord in New Orleans, later becoming St. Mark's Parish in Chalmette. He was then appointed pastor of St. Rita's Church in Harahan for 14 years and the dean of East Jefferson Deanery of the Archdiocese of New Orleans. In 2006, the Monsignor was appointed pastor of St. Anselm's in Madisonville, and where he currently serves. Monsignor currently serves as the president of St. Ben Seminary Alumni Association. Monsignor also serves as the Priest Council Chairman of the Sites and Boundaries Committee, Special Events Committee, and the Priest Salary Board for the Archdiocese of New Orleans. Additionally, the Monsignor serves as Priest State Convention Committee and the Archdiocese Priest Convent Committee. Monsignor formerly served as the Archdiocesan of the Finance Council, and he was chairman of the Priestly Life and Ministry and the Priest Personnel Committee. In his spare time, the Monsignor enjoys time with his family and a good time at golf. He is also the chaplain of the crew of August Parade. Monsignor,
Thank you.
I don't know how you do all of that, but you're much better. But thank you for everything you do. God bless you. And please lead us in prayer.
Okay, thank you. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Let us pray. Almighty and loving God, we thank you and praise you for your faithfulness to our St. Tammany Parish councilmen and councilwomen, those present and those not able to join us. Our trust is in you. We ask that you inspire our hearts today to form right and just decisions. Fill our lives with your love. Fill our conversations with your grace and truth. Bless our parish president, Pat Brister, and parish council. May they govern with wisdom, compassion, and strength for the welfare of those they serve. Bless our police. May no harm come upon them as they protect our lives and keep our parish safe. Bless our firefighters and first responders. Watch over them as they battle emergencies and deliver life-saving care to our loved ones. Bless our employees. May we always acknowledge and appreciate their dedication, service, and hard work on our behalf. Bless our residents and visitors. May the time spent in our parish be safe, relaxing, enjoyable, and fulfilling. Bless our parents, grandparents, and teachers. May they provide our children with valuable life lessons and guide toward a future filled with promise and opportunity. Bless our children, the future of our parish. May they receive the love, nurturing, and support they need to become responsible, contributing, and successful adults. Bless our veterans. Protect them as they go forth with courage and fortitude to defend our country and preserve our freedom. Bless our clergy. May they foster spiritual growth in our community through guidance, ministry, and counsel. Bless our volunteers. May their passion and commitment be an inspiration for others to join in giving back to our community. Bless the homeless and less fortunate. May they find nourishment, shelter, support, and hope. Bless our community. May we embrace our diversity, value our differences, and ensure that everyone has a voice in our governance as we continue to make St. Tammany Parish an outstanding place to live, work, play, visit, and raise a family. Today, especially, Almighty Father, we pray for the healing of Councilwoman Maureen O'Brien and for the repose of the soul of Patricia Gallinghouse. We ask this in Christ our Lord, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much. Katie, it was a pleasure meeting you tonight. We wish you the best of luck at LSU. Mr. Bender, I believe you also have a guest to introduce?
Yes,
Did he turn it off?
yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Blanchard. I'd like to introduce, and we'll do the presentation a little bit, our junior council member for this month, June, Ms. Catherine Glory. I'll give you more about it later, but our council chairman has asked that you say these following words. Clerk, please call the roll. Can you say that?
Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean?
Here.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Toledano?
Present.
Mr. Tanner? Mr. Lorino?
Yep.
Ms. Blanchard?
Present.
Mr. Groby?
Present.
Mr. Canulet?
Here.
Mr. Bellisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stefanczyk?
Present.
Mr. Bender?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, the first item of business is a special item. It's an announcement of a public meeting, Animal Services. This has to be read in its entirety. Notice is hereby given that at its meeting to be held on Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, at 6 p.m. at the council chambers of the Parish of Government Complex, 21490 Coop Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana. The Parish Council of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, plans to consider adopting a resolution ordering and calling an election to be held within the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, to authorize the renewal of an ad valorem tax. Anything else, Madam Clerk, with that one?
Mr. Sluter, if he wanted to speak.
Mr. Sluter, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Okay. So we move on to presentations. The parish president. This is the presentation and proclamation to St. Tammany Parish Government Employee of the Month.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This proclamation is going to be a little different from our normal Employee of the Month because he's an unusually helpful man in our parish, and he's been here for quite some time. So I would like to read the proclamation, Ron, okay? Whereas Ron Keller has been a devoted St. Tammany Parish employee since June 20th, 1981, serving as a senior land use planner in the Planning and Development Department. And whereas Ron has worked his entire career guiding parish residents through many land use processes and procedures and assisting them in moving projects forward. And whereas he has trained and mentored a multitude of co-workers for decades and has been instrumental in developing current development processes, and whereas Ron has been a dedicated employee and will retire this July after 37 years of service. We are proud to have had him on our team and thank him for his service to our community and to St. Tammany Parish government. Now, therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as president of St. Tammany, do hereby recognize the hard work and many accomplishments of Ron Keller and I encourage all employees of St. Tammany Parish to thank him for his contributions and commitments to our parish. Ron, I don't know how you say thank you for 37 years, but I did my best.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you very much. Yes, yes. Well, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, please.
This is my wife, Chef.
Yes.
Put up with me these many years.
You may. I'm going to move this stuff out of your way.
Okay.
Stand aside.
Thank you very much for this, Pat. I really appreciate it. I would just like to say that I've had the great pleasure and been fortunately to work under two great parish presidents, Miss Pat, of course, and Kevin Davis, which I thought was a very good parish president. Also, would like to say that it's been a real pleasure working for my director, Mr. Fontenot, for these many years. His management style has made all of our employees in our department comfortable and appreciated. And Sydney, I want to thank you for being my director and putting up for me for these last 20 years or so. And lastly and foremostly, I would like to thank the citizens of St. Tammany Parish for allowing me to serve them for these last 37 years. It's been a great honor and a privilege to do so, and I thank you all very much. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair,
You may,
just to
Mr.
put it in
Fontenot.
perspective, when Mr. Keller started, I had just returned from my senior trip in Destin.
You appreciate his saying that, don't you, Ron? I have just one quick announcement, Madam Chairman, if I might.
ma'am.
June is National Home Ownership Month, and as every other year, we have some flyers out there for information for anyone that might know someone or need some ownership information for themselves. They're on the side table, so please pick those up. Very happy about that. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bender, I believe you have an introduction to be made.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman. As I said a little bit earlier at the start of the meeting, Ms. Catherine Glory is our junior council member for the month of June. I think I do about 3 a year, and she's certainly very deserving. Catherine is 12 years old, just finished 6th grade, right? Going to 7th grade, and always glad to hear this because I never know when I ask someone to do this, what exactly are their grades? But inevitably, all A's and B's. So I tell them every now and then, get a C and have a little bit of fun, okay? You know what I mean? That's what I used to tell my dad. It's a little fun, Dad. Anyway, I'm sorry. Bad joke, okay. Catherine, when she gets older, would like to be a chef, which fits in perfect for Southern Louisiana, don't you think? Absolutely. So, Catherine, here's a certificate of recognition, formally recognizing you, Catherine Glory, as serving as our junior council member at our June 7th council meeting, signed by Ms. Pat Brister, who you met, our parish president, and myself as council member of District 12. And congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Mr. Smith, I believe you have a presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And as the recipients of this next presentation come to the podium from the St. Tammany Parish Tourist Commission, we'd like to offer a few comments as they come forward, and the parish president as well, who will be making the presentation. Just want to make a few brief comments, though, to you and to the audience and the constituents of St. Tammany Parish about this group. It's an honor, and it is a privilege to present this group of fine St. Tammany Parish Commission staff and commissioners. I think we have about four staff people and one commissioner with us tonight, including myself. But I'd like to say, as we prepare to make this presentation, this is one of the finest commissions that St. Tammany Parish and the state of Louisiana has to offer. And I can say that from a position of experience, because I work with them on a monthly basis, a day-to-day basis. And I just cannot say too many things about the fine work that this group produces for St. Tammany Parish in many, many ways. But in the month of April, we had an opportunity, though, to travel with them over to a 12-state conference where this commission, as well as 4 other groups from the state of Louisiana, walked away with 4 prestigious awards. So out of that 12 states and 14 awards that were presented, St. Tammany Parish's Tourist Commission, along with 3 other agencies in the state of Louisiana, walked away with 4 of the 12. And I thought that was very noteworthy. So as we prepare to come down and make this presentation, we thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Councilman Smith. It's my honor to read this, this proclamation and certificate of recognition. St. Tammany Parish Government, certificate of recognition. The St. Tammany Parish Government desires to recognize the Tourist and Convention Commission for receiving the 2018 Shining Example Award from the Southeast Tourism Society for Tourism Office of the Year in the budget category of $2+ million. This award recognizes the outstanding contributions of the Tourist and Convention Commission in professional tourism. Did we lose our member? There you go. This certificate of recognition was unanimously approved by the St. Tammany Parish Council on the 7th day of June 2018. Is that correct? So, thank you very much. And introduce yourself, since I didn't do that, Donna, please.
Okay. I'm Donna O'Daniels. I'm the president and CEO of the St. Tammany Parish Tourist and Convention Commission. President Brister, Councilman Smith, and other members of the Parish Council, we appreciate this recognition. We were thrilled to receive this award and to be honored among so many worthy tourist commissions and convention and visitor bureaus, not just from Louisiana, but from the 12 states that make up the southeastern region. Was a real honor and certainly a testament to the hard work that both our staff and our commissioners do on behalf of the residents of St. Tammany Parish to increase the economic impact of tourism here in St. Tammany. So we appreciate this, this recognition very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and congratulations.
To name 2 people, 2 different roles.
Thank you. Oh, we have people in the queue. I'm sorry, I didn't see. All right, Mr. Belisario? No. Mr. Belisario, is there something you wanted to say? We have you in the queue for some reason. I didn't know. Okay.
Remove it, yes.
And then Mr. Smith. Okay. So we are to Mr. Taladano. I believe you have a presentation.
I do. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Ms. Brister to also join me at the podium. If you will, the Gallon House family members who are present, if they'll come forward and join us, please. Madam Chairman, members of the council, it's a very sad moment that we take an opportunity to recognize the life of such an outstanding leader of the community. And what we really should convert this to is a celebration of life of Joanne Gallinghouse. And I have a pleasure to do this along with Ms. Brister, but there's hundreds of people and thousands of people in this community that have been impacted by Joanne Gallinghouse. And sadly, her untimely death brings us before us today to acknowledge her and acknowledge her contributions to the community. The essence of leadership is what Joanne Gallinghouse was about. She led in every sector of her life. Her and her husband, Walter Gallinghouse, who was also a dear friend of mine, who unfortunately passed too. Both of these people recognize what is important about giving back into our community, and they gave back a multiple for what they received. I want to just highlight to you some of Joanne Gallinghouse's accomplishments. She was certainly active in the business community. She was very active in the volunteer community. She served on many boards, including the St. Tammany Chamber West Chamber of Commerce. She was a member of the board for the Youth Service Bureau. She was a member of the St. Tammany Economic Development Foundation. She was a member of the SLU Alumni Association, the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra, the North Shore Advisory Board, Habitat for Community, the Three Rivers Art Festival. And I should tell you the story about the Three Rivers Art Festival. Very fortunately, I was one of the people that worked with her from the get-go, and she was one of the great ladies who were present in my living room when we began the Three Rivers Art Festival. And from that day, and I said this many times, the easiest job I had was to cook the fish for the people and get the thing started. But the women like Joanne Gallinghouse are the people that have made Three Rivers Art Festival one of the leading festivals in the southern United States. And she was very much a founding member of that board. She also had chaired the festival on many occasions for several years and continued to serve on the board until her death. She also served 3 terms on the board of the St. Tammany West Chamber of Commerce, and she was one of the moving forces in beginning the leadership program for St. Tammany Parish. Among other accolades she received was the City Business Women of the Year in 2011. She received the Community Leadership Award for St. Tammany West Chamber of Commerce in 2007. She was the YMCA Hero Award in 2011, and if that was not enough, she was named Alumni of the Year for SLU and for St. Tammany Parish. Her loss to St. Tammany Parish is immeasurable. But what we have learned from Joanne Gallinghouse is if you give back to your community, the community benefits, it's a better community, and you are a better person for it. She was just that. She was a Gold Star Plus. We're very honored to have her family here, and I know Ms. Brister might want to add to those comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teledano.
I will just take a minute. Joanne was a dear friend, and I will never forget the smile, her laughter, and her flaming red hair. I can see it today. We miss her, but we know she did so many good things for this parish. We thank you for sharing her with us. This is Joanne's mother, Miss Rose, Mama Rose, she's called, and she shared her daughter with us throughout, and thank you so much.
I didn't know she could do so much.
Would you like to say anything?
No, my
Introduce
son
you?
is going to.
Oh, okay.
Eddie?
And two aunts also.
It's my Aunt Weezy and my Aunt Nancy and my mom. We just want to say thank you guys for this award or recognition. I know you guys are busy and you don't give these out every day, and so we're honored, and Joanne would be honored. She loved St. Tammany. She really did. We couldn't believe she would want to leave the cultural epicenter of the world, Metairie, Louisiana. But when she came here 30 years ago, she took us downtown. She loved Covington. She took us to the Kumquat bookstore and the feed store and the landing. And there wasn't a time when I came in from out of town, or any of us, right, visited her, where she didn't take us to Coffee Rainey, get an iced coffee, and then show us all the new stuff you guys do and build and develop. And we're impressed and honored. And Joanne loved St. Tammany. And thank you for loving her back.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dan.
Oops, I'm sorry. Dropped that right on the floor. Here, Rose. You take this right here, okay? Come on. There you go.
This is my sister.
Yeah, I know. You can tell your sister. So.
It's so close.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Very sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Stefanczyk, I believe you also have a presentation, and this will be our last presentation of the evening, I believe.
I don't have a presentation.
Make an
I just
introduction.
want to introduce some people that are here tonight. I think they're sitting way in the back row. It is Odette Jennings. She is the leader of the Republican teens in St. Tammany Parish, and she has some of the teens with her, and I've asked them to come up so that she could introduce them. But they have been the #1 Republican organization in the United States for teens for the past 3 years, I think. And so, and they're headed back to Washington, D.C. next month to try and bring back that honor again. So, Dad, I just wanted to introduce you, and you introduce the people to you. And they're here tonight doing their part about learning about government.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yes, Ethan Parker, Ryan Spires, and Crystal Woodworth. These are new members of my group, so that's why I try to keep them focused. Well, and it was 3 years, so we're back going to DC next month. And thank you so much for all y'all support.
Thank you. That brings us to appointments. Number 1, a resolution to appoint Dr. Vicky, Trentina George, to replace Dr. Eugene Garcia, who resigned on the Board of Commissioners for St. Tammany Parish Mosquito
So
Abatement
moved.
District. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Thompson? Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Sorry, I forgot. Okay, we have a resolution, number 2 item, resolution to approve the appointment of Oscar Hernandez to replace Eric Swess, who resigned on the Board of Commissioners for the St. Tammany Parish Development District. Mr. Bellisario? And do we have a second? Okay. All in favor, or seeing no one in the queue, please vote. And Mr. Thompson? Yours, that would be a yes for Mr. Thompson.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
We have under item number 3, a resolution to appoint Frank Massera to replace Jeff Haig, who resigned on the Board of Commissioners for St. Tammany Parish Water District number 3. Mr. Lorino?
So moved.
So moved. And we have a second from Mr. Thompson. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. And Mr. Thompson, that's a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
All right, items to be polled for, any item not polled from the consent calendar are automatically approved and hold by 1 vote. Items polled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. So we will begin with, there is item number 12, ordinance 5997 has asked to be polled. Under resolutions, item number 1, C-4986. Item number 2, C-4987. Item number 3, C-4988. Item number 4, C-4989. Item number 5, C-4990. Item number 6, C-4991. Item number 7, C-4992. Item number 8, C-4993. Item number 9, C-4994. And item 17, C-5014. And item 18, C-501. Those are all the items that I've received. Mr. Dean, do you have anything else?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
No.
Mr. Thompson? Mr. Taladano?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lorino?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Grovey?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Canulette?
None.
Mr. Bellisario?
None.
Ms. O'Brien's on here. Mr. Stefanczyk?
None.
Mr. Bender?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Smith?
None.
All right. We have a motion for Mr. Stefanczyk to adopt the consent calendar. Is there a second by Mr. Smith? Seeing no one, seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Thompson, that's a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
We'll start with item number 12. An ordinance calendar number 5997, an ordinance to amend the 2018 operating budget amendment number 5. This was polled at Agenda Review. Finance Committee recommended introduction. We have a motion for Mr. Loreno. We have a second for Mr. Stefanczyk. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
No.
Oh, no, we don't. We
Intro
just
only.
Okay, so that's it. All right, we're moved to resolutions. Item number 1, and we have, let's see here, are these? Okay, so yeah. So with this item number 1 through 9, that's C-4986, C-4987, C-4988, C-4989, C-4990, C-4991, and it goes on to number 9, right? C-4992 and C-4993 and C-994. All of these items, I'll entertain a motion to postpone. Mr. Bellisario, a second by Mr. Groby. I have Mr. Bellisario, was that for the motion or to speak?
Just for the motion.
Okay.
As we all know, Mayor, I should speak, is we have a company that's looking at, a third-party company is looking at this, and hopefully we'll have a report sometime in the next month so we all can review those and then move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Mr. Smith.
Yes, ma'am. I had a question that Mr. Bellisario answered in part, but if you could just elaborate just a little bit more on why we have the third-party company taking another look at these, I'd appreciate it. I just was not.
Sure. The administration, Gina Campo, they felt the best thing to do with these reports is to have a third-party look at those so that we can say very clearly they were reviewed, if there were any changes, why there were changes, or they're fair and presented with no changes. But they felt that the easiest way to do that was not just the different council members working with their staff. They felt it would be better if we bring in a third party, and all the guys on and ladies on the utility work group totally concurred with that position.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Groby, I see you're in the queue. Did you want to speak, or was that the second?
Thank you. Do we have a cost on what it's costing us to have someone review these?
Councilman, I believe that the amount was in the $7,500 to $9,000 range, but less than our threshold for a contract. It's under a purchase order.
Was there anything further from the administration? Okay. So seeing no other person in the queue requesting to speak, please vote for the motion to postpone. And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
I'm gonna leave this. All right. That brings us to item number 17 under resolution, Resolution CS number C-5014, a resolution to concur or not concur with Folsom annexation of rezoning of 40.76 acres from Parish A-1 to the Village of Folsom A-2, Ward 2, District 3. Mr. Thompson, so moved, and is there a second? Mr. Dean. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And I'm sorry, will you clarify that is a motion to Mr. Thompson? To concur. That is a motion to concur. Please vote.
Just 1 minute.
Hold on.
Sorry, mine.
Okay.
Gotta go through all of those.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Now we can vote.
You need process, not thinking.
Yes.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
That brings us to item number 18, a resolution CS number C-5015, a resolution to amend ordinance CS number 17-3823 to make changes to the 2018 capital improvement budget and capital assets. This was pulled by the agenda review, sent to Finance Committee, and Finance Committee recommended adoption. It's been moved by Mr. Lorino. It's a second by Mr. Belisario. Seeing no member in the queue to speak, please vote.
Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Thompson's vote is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, that brings us to appeals. Carlos Hernandez and Louis Mont Jr. appealing the Zoning Commission approval on March 6, 2018 of a text change. Ordinance amending the Unified Development Code, Volume 1, zoning relative to the definition and establishment of reception venues within unincorporated St. Tammany Parish, 2017-845-ZC. Mr. Stefanczyk, did you have something that you wanted to?
Yes, we did. Last month, we held this up and postponed it. Carlo and Louis Monte had said they wanted to speak against the ordinance, or speak about the ordinance that was on that was passed through from the zoning commission. And I told them then we were going to redo because what the zoning commission sent us, and send them back another ordinance to try and get some compromise on what the language is we want in this kind of an ordinance. And I don't know whether they want to speak tonight or not. Carlo, are you going to speak?
No, I don't have a card. There's not been a card turned in unless you have something to say, Carlos.
Do what?
There's,
No yellow card.
yeah, we only have a card from Mr. Shane on the matter.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I've told Carlo, and I think you know Carlo, and Louis is not here, I don't believe, because we told them what we were going to do. So, Mr. Shane, have you got something to say?
No, sir.
No, you, okay. Then I have, I want to override the appeal, so I motion to override the zoning commission's language.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Canulet seconded the motion. And then I have one member in the queue, Mr. Lorino.
Mr. Stefanczyk, I just want to, you and I have spoken on this numerous times, and I just want to make it clear, one of the things that I'm very interested in as this moves through the process. We have, at this time, we have businesses setting up in subdivisions and operating within subdivisions, and I don't think that's something that we should allow, or at least they should have to come to the council and try to have it approved, or planning and zoning and have it approved to do it, so that the residents in the subdivision can voice their opposition or support for it. But I think it's very unfair when someone buys a house in any subdivision and another person buys it and then decides to turn it into a business by having weddings, all types of parties on the weekends and so forth and so on in the neighborhood. And I just want to make sure that we address that issue in this also.
We're addressing the issue of, in this one, of allowing people to apply for a zoning change if they want to go for this particular type of a venue. But I think the thing you're talking about more so is the short-term rentals.
No, sir.
Oh, you're talking about this one?
Yeah, good. Okay. No, no, sir, I'm not talking about short-term rentals. I'm talking about using me, buying a house in a subdivision, not living in that house, and then turning that house in the subdivision into a venue that allows weddings, parties, and things like that are making money, but really, really impeding a neighborhood. I'm not against anybody making money or starting a business, but I am if they come into a subdivision where residents have houses and not a commercial area.
And Mr. Lorino, you and I talked about it, and I think this is the first step in what we're trying to get to and get part of this done. The second thing is, and we've been working on it, legal counsel and myself have been trying to draft an ordinance, and we got a really skeleton version of it, I'd say, coming forward to take care of the situation you're talking about. And because as of today, we have no laws in St. Tammany Parish to stop people from doing what you're saying they're doing. And believe me, you're not the only one. I mean, now my emails are starting to come in every day on people who are doing that. And I know most of the council members have had some of those complaints in their district, and especially along the waterways. We've had a tremendous problem with it. People buy a house in a subdivision. They think that they're going to live there, and they got an acre lot or 2 acre lot or whatever it is, and all of a sudden somebody buys the house next door and start rents it out on a daily or weekly or weekend basis. And we don't have any way to control that yet. We're going to be bringing that ordinance back in about September, and hopefully everybody will support that as well. We're tying all these things together to try and get an ordinances through that make sense and that will stand up in court. And that's been one of the issues. Is we've looked at Orleans, we've looked at Lafayette, we've looked at Jefferson Parish, we've looked at Shreveport, we've looked at other places, and we're trying to see what they're doing that passes muster so that we can get this thing done and do it right the first time. So that'll be the ordinance coming up in September. This one is allowing somebody, and they have to come back for a zoning change to be able to do this. And this one falls into the bed and breakfast restaurant type thing where somebody would have to apply for a zoning change to get that from where they are today. And then if they get that, they would have to live within those requirements, and this thing has tightened up those requirements very dramatically. So that's where we are on it, and I want to, at the end of this, not only do we override the appeal and the text change being overridden, is that I've got another ordinance introduced tonight, or to actually substitute and send it back to the Planning Commission for their review.
Thank you, Steve. And I understand, but I just want to make sure that we address that issue at some point in time. And I didn't want this to get moving without at least voicing this main concern for a lot of us sitting up here. And we'll be following, and if we need to make an amendment to it or an ordinance or whatever, I definitely will do that. And I think it's very important that we do that in this same 4 corners of this resolution. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Bender, I believe you asked to speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to make this part 4 words. I agree with 5 words, Mr. Lorino. Okay? Now, with that said, there's 2 things that concern me, and I know they concern Councilman Stefanczyk as well, listening to his comments, okay? I just want to be very clear on the direction we're going from tonight forward. First of all, to have a bed and breakfast get approved in an area with absolutely gorgeous homes, okay, that have been, they're part of the historic value of St. Tammany Parish, okay? We have these in the greater Slidell area. We have them in Lacombe. We have them everywhere, right? Everywhere on our rivers. And to have those residents around it have to deal with, well, there's too many people now coming to the venue, you see? a problem has been created because, from everything I can tell, and I'm not passing a judgment on it other than my impression, is the bed and breakfast was extended to something bigger. Okay? Now we have a big concern, naturally. Okay? The other thing is, for our businesses that are in this type of business, many of those are on commercial highways and everything. To simply allow this type of event to occur, as Mike said, in neighborhoods, we're hurting those businesses, in my opinion, unfairly. And I'm not talking about any one particular business. It's just common sense. They're paying commercial prices. They have a venue there, and all of a sudden we have something pop up in any particular neighborhood. We all have them in our district where they could pop up. So my understanding is, Mr. Stefancic, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Stefancic, you agree with what I just said in general. Okay.
In
thank
general,
you.
yes. Yeah.
Now, here's the only thing I want to know, my next question. The ordinance that you're going to present tonight, okay, I don't have great knowledge of. I don't know if anybody else does either. That's going to the zoning commission. So what are we sending to the zoning commission that we're going to be voting on tonight? I don't want to vote except to vote with you to override the zoning approval tonight. I want to see what our plans are going to be, because we should dictate those plans on this important issue. I don't know that I want to vote on ordinance tonight. So what, if I could, Madam Chairman, a brief explanation of what this ordinance is going to be?
What,
Mr. Stefancic?
what this ordinance is going to be, Jerry, we sent the definition.
Oops, sorry.
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 We sent the definitions to zoning quite some time back, and told them to look at it, make changes to it, and and take into consideration all the things that we felt like a zoning commission should take into. They didn't do that. They turned around and approved it and sent it back to us. So we said no. We went in and wrote up about 3 pages of restrictions on the operations of this stuff, and that's what we're sending back to them.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. Question, please. But are we sending that back to them prematurely? Because if we override this tonight, we have no immediate emergency. I'm just throwing out the question as to, should we review what we're sending back to them, as Mr. Lorino said, and we all be involved, because it's going to eventually involve all of our districts. We're either going to have somebody who's coming to us on appeal with a room full of people for and against. I just want to make sure that we all are on the board with doing it right. Thank you.
Mr. Bender, are you making a motion to postpone?
Well, he's not proposing his ordinance right now.
But it sounds like you don't want to send it back to zoning.
Well, no.
So
basically, what I'm doing
is only to
is
override the approval,
okay.
right?
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
I mean,
That's what
later,
we're voting on right now.
But you're saying later tonight you're going to
No.
propose an ordinance?
As soon as we get this done, as part of this appeal, we're sending it back. We're able to send stuff back to planning and zoning. And that's, got with legal, everybody's agreed on what the approach should be to send that back. And then, I have the ordinance. We were going to try and put it in the packet, but that ordinance wasn't part of the original thing that went through and got appealed. So we couldn't put the ordinance in the packet. We will be, basically, it will come back to us from zoning as an ordinance for introduction if they do anything with it. And that's when then we would have to look at it and see, do we like it or not? Or somebody could appeal that one.
Okay. Madam Chairman, I would like to just make this comment, and only this comment is made not aimed at Mr. Stefancic or anything that's been reviewed, but in the total interest of transparency. When I hear that this wasn't on time to make the agenda packet, then we would be voting in a few minutes on something that didn't hit the agenda packet. And I guess I'd ask Mr. Hand, I don't think we can do that.
As I appreciate this matter, this comes before you tonight on an existing ordinance. This is a text change. And Mr.
Okay.
Stefancic has moved to override what zoning sent back. And what he's going to do, he is not introducing an ordinance at this time.
Okay.
He is simply referring back to zoning, a new proposed ordinance for them to review, make comment, and then come back to us, at which time an ordinance for introduction will have to be made. It will lay over for an additional 30 days before its adoption.
And you know what? Now I'm crystal clear on that. And I wanted the public to understand that too, because this is a hot item, okay? So, Steve, I get it now. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Smith, do you still desire to speak?
Yes, ma'am, but I'll be brief. I don't want to interfere with the process that's in motion right now, but I do want to have a comment. I guess that'll come when it's time to take the vote about something relative to this.
Now would probably be the appropriate time.
Okay, well, good, thank you. The problem before us tonight, as I appreciate it, is further exasperated, and not so much with bed and breakfasts or the weekend pieces that are included in this, but we have a similar situation with some of our violators in this parish, developers, who are also ignoring our zoning classification under the same premise that was mentioned here about this particular situation. And that is, we have people who are coming in and they are getting a permit to do business in a certain way, and then later on find out that that's not what they intended, and then they come back and they do something different than what they were authorized to do. And I think that at the heart of that issue, though, is not being able to adequately police these violators, which is another piece. I didn't want to bring that up at this time, but that's something that we need to be cognizant and aware of, that we're going to have to deal with. And I guess it has to do with our code enforcement office being limited in what they can do. But it's something else that's also being done in another part of our code that I think we might want to take a look at as well. Not might want to, we need to take a look at it, because these violators now, the amount of it is getting to be discerning, concerning.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Lorino, I believe you wanted to speak.
Mr. Smith, I couldn't agree with you more. I have been the last 6 or 7 months, and our people in the parish do everything that they can possibly do when we present them with some violation of a code or someone doing something illegally, and they go there, they make their cease and desist, and you know what? They continue to do it every single day. Now, why do they do it? It's very simple. We do not have enough teeth in our law to fine those people. And they laugh at us. I'm going to be a little bit more direct, Mr. Smith. They laugh at us. And I can give you a few of them, but I'll wait until the appropriate time. But I agree. We need to look at that. We need to make the changes in whatever way we can put more teeth, whether it's code enforcement, whether a different way of handling it. This parish needs to do it. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Stefancic, if you could repeat, what are your motion? I believe we're back to that.
My motion is to override the appeal.
Okay. And do we have a second? Mr. Canulet? Okay. All in favor? Or all? There we go. And Mr. Thompson, your vote? There's a yes from Mr. Thompson.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Now, basically, I should have said the override was original text changed as being overridden, and a revised ordinance will be substituted and referred back to Planning Commission. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, and we have a second from Mr. Canulette. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Okay, what are we voting on?
I think to send it back to zoning.
Okay,
Do you just want to do a verbal? Do we need to? All right, you're putting it in your resolution, Mr. Stefanczyk?
Yeah, well, the resolution, I think we have to, yeah, as part of the resolution, we're revising the ordinance and sending it back.
All right.
That's the resolution we're adopting.
All right.
Don't think we've ever done something quite like this before, and this is.
Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry. That's a yes from Mr. Thompson.
They're going to look at it and then send it back to us.
Okay.
Yes.
We are ultimately to decide.
motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
All right. I believe that brings us to item number 2 under appeals. Is there any further business with item 1? No. Item number 2, Sean Bernard appealing the planning and zoning denial of the April 10th, 2018 to create a minor subdivision of 2.44 acres located south of Fascine Lane, west of Slidell, by subdividing it into parcel A and B, Ward 9, District 13. Is Mr. Benson here? Or is it, yeah, Bernard, I'm sorry. Okay, it's 10 minutes on each? 10 minutes on each. You have 10, are you Mrs. Bernard? Yes. Or, okay, you have 10 minutes to speak.
So I guess I'll just explain why. Is that, okay.
And you don't have to use the whole 10 minutes, but you have
Okay.
10 minutes available.
Okay. We want to subdivide the property. We had bought the property originally thinking we would move our family from New Orleans to Slidell. And after spending more and more time there, the family just decided not to uproot the kids that were happy and doing well in school. And so we started using the property less because of our kids' schedules, and so we rented the house. It was a nightmare. And we thought we went through a real estate agent to protect ourselves, protect our house, try to protect the neighbors, and we got completely scammed by a career criminal. And so we are now kind of backwards about $30,000 between unpaid rent and damage to the property that we had just renovated for our family to use as a weekend house. And so we don't want to get rid of the property. We love the property. The family still loves it. We just don't want to take them away from their friends and family. Our oldest is 14 and our youngest is 6. So they're established with their friends and their activities. The property is large. If it's separated into 2, it's still each of the A and the B will still be larger than most of the properties in the neighborhood. We have no intention of either of them being more rental property. We just are trying to make a wise financial move to try and recover some of this lost major money that was a big hit to the family. And if we're able to sell the house, the part of the property with the house, we would keep the lot as something for us to eventually build us a house on when our time is more free and we're able to. When our children, we have competitive gymnasts, they're busy, and we're out of town on the weekends with them. If we are able to sell the lot, that would help give us the money to maintain the property until our schedule frees up. That's really kind of where we're at with that. I don't know if there's anything else I need to say.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Tom McNulty, I believe that's the only other card we received on this matter. You also have 10 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this time. My name is Tom McNulty. I'm a neighbor to the property 360 Fashion Lane, and I'm also a member of our HOA association. and to acknowledge them tonight. We live in Coin-Doleston, and everybody from Coin-Doleston stand up who's here tonight to oppose this. We oppose, I was present at the April 10th meeting when I guess it was the variance to subdivide the property came up. One of the things that we oppose is most of when Coin-Doleston was developed, it was developed as a tranquil, peaceful community, meandering roads with large tracts of land. We don't have subdivisions in Coin-Doleston. We understand that sometimes people make bad real estate choices. We acknowledge that. But what bothers us and bothers me, because I've been through this before as a municipal employee, is their remedy should not have a lasting effect on the residents who are the taxpayers and are living there right now. And that's what this is going to create. The property is in, like she said, Mrs. Bernard said, it was a debacle for them and for the neighbors when it was a rental property. But we do not want to see a subdivision because when we've all talked about it, we just are against somebody's remedy. They'll sell the property and they'll move on. And then we, as the landowners, the vested taxpayers who want to stay there for the rest of our lives, are stuck with this subdivision, which we don't have in Coin-Doleston. Nobody's subdivided property. You can check the records. So we are here tonight to oppose that. And from a technical or environmental standpoint, if you will, if you're familiar with where we are, we're back against Bayou Bonfuca, and we flood. My wife and I, especially at the last property, and we expected that. We knew that when we moved in. But to add any more residents, I don't think it's a prudent thing to do because that property floods too. I mean, to the point where you can't get out. You have to get your cars out prior to the southeast winds. So based on that, and based mostly on the fact that we oppose subdivisions, and we don't want to set a precedent, and we really object to somebody's remedy having a lasting effect on our value of our homes and, quite honestly, on our peaceful living. That's really all I have to say unless you have any questions. And let me add this, too. You have to have, if you saw an overview of the property, there's got to be at least, I know you have to have 2 acres to subdivide. There's a pond on the property which is not fed by the bayou. It's got to be an acre. The pond itself has to be an acre. So I don't even know how you would put a piece of another house on this without filling it, the pond in, and we're in no fill area because where we're located. We're in that V zone. It's a no fill area, and I just think that allowing this to happen will have a negative effect on the residents who are vested there. Some of them here tonight are 30, 40-year residents. So we oppose it, and we're asking you to find it in our favor. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Bernard, you have a right to rebuttal. That is 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
The pond actually would stay with the main house. The property that would be subdivided and be a lot, if you're facing the house from the street, it would be to the left. And it would be a lot until, if we were able to build, whichever one sells, we keep the other. We don't want to leave. We love it. Our family loves the property. We like the street, everything that he said, that's exactly what we bought the property for. It's a large piece of property. It is not going to create any other, it's not going to be rental properties. It's just another large lot. It will be over an acre. Both of them will be over an acre. The pond will remain. It's not going to be filled in. It's staying. It's beautiful. And yes, it does flood. Everything floods, but that doesn't mean that there's other houses on the street that look far worse than ours. Like, it's not in the area, not necessarily the street. It's not, every house is not completely well manicured. It would be a new construction house that would go up on the second lot at some point, whenever our time is more available. Until then, we would keep it empty. There would be nothing there. And so we are not we're not here to create an eyesore, to do anything other than just keep part of the property for ourselves, for our family. We have 5 children that like to go out there. We just don't want to uproot them permanently right now until they're old, until my husband and I can move out there and It can be where we retire, or we use it as a vacation place for now until the time until we have more time to go out there. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. McNulty?
I certainly don't want to create an adversarial relationship because I really don't know the Bernards. They're absentee owners. Nobody is staying at that house right now. And in fact, we're going to be calling code enforcement. Nobody's cutting the grass. And we're not talking a little high. The grass is high. Kids are starting to hang out at the house. Nobody's taking care of the property. And again, we don't want to open the door or set a precedent for other subdivisions, which is another major thing that they just reminded me of as I talked to our group. So again, I don't think it's in the best interest of the people who've lived there. The house is not well cared for. Nobody's coming out there on weekends. I can see the house, and nobody's going out there. And it's not inhabitable, I don't think, right now, not because of them, because of the renters. So again, we oppose it, and please find it in our favor and the residents' favor.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because when I read in the staff comments that the staff recognizes that the proposal meets all parish code, and as a result of that, they recommended approval of the proposed minor subdivision request. A couple of questions. Number one, what is the current zoning of that property as it relates to Coin-de-Lesson?
The property is zoned A2, just 1 acre lot.
A2 and Coin-de-Lesson is zoned?
I believe Coin-de-Lesson is A2. I believe all of that area is A2.
Okay. And secondly, what is the distance between this property and Coin-de-Lesson subdivision, or is it a part of Coin-de-Lesson subdivision?
It's a part of Coin-de-Lesson subdivision.
It is a part of the
It is part of it.
If it's not, it's really close. It's not designated as a lot of Coin-de-Lesson that I can tell from the legal description, but if it's not, it's right on the edge of Coin-de-Lesson, the formal subdivision. I'm really not sure.
Okay. And finally, Sidney, in your estimation, since you responded to my question, I appreciate it. The pond that exists on the property now would not prohibit them from being able to, well, you already answered that question because you said it meets all of our code and requirements, so.
Yeah, parcel A, which is, most of the pond is on parcel A, which would be the vacant piece, and parcel B is where the existing residence is. Parcel A is 1.32 acres. And I don't know if you have the plat in your packet, but there's at least a half acre of property, probably 3/4 of an acre of property outside of the pond.
And finally, what was the justification that the zoning commission stated?
It would have been the planning commission. The hearing had to be held because the parcel B doesn't actually have frontage on the road. So in those situations, it has to go to the commission for a hearing. And it's my understanding that the applicant did not appear. There were a number of people in opposition to it, and the commission chose to deny it.
Thank you.
Mr. Bender?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Bernard, could you come up real quick? Okay, so Ms. Bernard, I believe I heard you say that the pond, which has a portion of it on A and B,
Okay.
that will stay with parcel B, correct?
I don't know my husband is the one that has been working with the zoning on the exact drawings for it. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm not 100% positive. He's the one that has been dealing with the way that it would be drawn out and everything.
Okay, and I believe that is what I heard you say. That doesn't mean that, you were completely sure. I understand that, okay?
Yes, that's.
and you want to do this subdivision or re-subdivision, so to speak, of this property to sell parcel A to recoup some funds, some money?
Yes, so the part that has the house, I mean, we want to keep part of, we love the property. We love the neighborhood. We love all of it. We want to try, it's not because it was a bad real estate decision. It was a great real estate decision. We thought we went the right way with using a real estate company to find a long-term rental who sold us and completely scammed us. And this is to recoup $30,000 that is our children's future, not just, this isn't a bad decision. This is us trying to help. I don't even know how, we want to keep part of the property. We love it. We want to be out there. At this time, I mean, we're so far behind. If we were to put the entire property up for sale, we're backwards. The house isn't worth what we now are going to have to put into it to renovate it a second time after we had already done a small renovation and redid the bathrooms and did all head-to-toe cleanup and paint and flooring. And so we want to keep part of it, and that's really the whole purpose of it. We just don't want the whole thing. And so it doesn't make sense for us right now to try to keep the whole thing. We don't want to we don't want to go the route of another renter. We don't have any other rental properties. That was just our option at the time because we weren't able to use it. We were out of town a lot. We still are out of town a lot. And so that's where the subdivision is coming from.
I understand. I will just say to you, and to both sides, having lived in Slidell for 42 years, and I represent a portion of Bayou Liberty Road, that whole area, from earlier years, I'm very familiar with the property, convalescent, other than all of us that flooded, okay? Beautiful, beautiful area. I have a concern with doing this re-subdivision. I'm just telling you, okay? It doesn't speak well to me, so I'm more than likely not going to go that direction, but I do wish you and your family well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Stefanski?
Yeah.
You may say, you may have a seat.
Yes, thank you. I've talked with Michelle about this. I've represented this area for 28 years. And I dealt with the whole area down there. George Dunbar laid out the entire portion of Fashion Lane and all the lanes down there, plus Peninsula Drive and the Gardere and all the roads in that subdivision. And he made a pretty good layout when people looked at it, and he had pieces that were 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres, different sized lots in there, but they were all drawn for a specific reason for a certain attraction to that piece of the property. And people who bought homes in there, bought them with an expectation. They expected that was not going to change. Now, we had some attempts after Katrina to do something very similar to this because houses were gone, lots were totally wiped out, and we would not entertain any of those at that time. So I feel sorry for your family. Whatever, but we can't make a decision up here based on the fact that you made a bad decision. And the Coindaleston area down there, from my point of view, needs to remain as it is. And I would certainly, from my point of view, working with those people that many years, and working with George and everybody knowing what happened there, I would probably never vote to subdivide a lot in that subdivision. So unless there's somebody else, I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second.
There is no one else in the queue. We
the
have a
motion
first,
is-
we have a second. Go ahead.
The motion is to concur with the plan.
No, it would be a
denial.
denial. Yeah, it is to concur with the denial, yes.
Concur with the denial.
Second.
And we have a second from Mr. Bender. Seeing no other person in the queue, please vote.
Motion passes, 10 yeas, 1 nay, 2 absent.
And as being the representative for this area, it's the sister city, or sister community to my own neighborhood that was developed by the same developer. It was built with that intent, as everything that Steve said. It's meant to be intact. And Ms. Bernard, I hope that you and your family will enjoy it in the future. It is a great asset to have, and it's a beautiful piece of property that's there. Sorry, I know I'm a soccer mom. I'm calling on the weekends. I fully understand. But I do believe that keeping this property intact preserves the community in which you originally were attracted to, and that many of us, either in their neighborhood or my own neighborhood, we want to be close enough to the city, but we want to live out in a very pretty, pristine nature area. So this is a very special neighborhood, and I wish you and your family the best of luck. Yes, Mr. Stefanczyk. Okay,
Motion.
all right. All in favor, or please, let's see, we need, please vote. Mr. Canulet, did we lose him? We have one more absent.
Motion passes, 10 yeas, 4 absent.
That brings us to item number 3, Rochelle Swan appealing the zoning commission approval of May 1st, 2018 to rezone 10.44 acres located east of East Highway 190 Service Road, south of Melanie Lane, north of Slimmer Road, from A-3 Suburban District to HC-1 Highway Commercial District and NC-1 Professional Office District to HC-2A Highway Commercial District. Mr. Toledano, District 5.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Whoops, I'm sorry, there you go. I'm sorry. Yes, sir, you should have a mic.
Thank you again. I have in front of me a letter request from the gentleman who filed the appeal in this case, advising us that his group, i.e. the representatives of Kings Forest, which, by the way, is one of our oldest subdivisions in our parish, are working hand in hand with the developer. He's asked that the matter would be postponed with the hope that by July we can bring back a final agreement. On his request and the members of his committee, I move that the matter be postponed.
Okay, and do we have a second? Mr. Lorino, second. I don't believe there's a member. Are you, Mr. Smith, in the queue? Okay, you're second. All right, Mr. Smith is the second on that one. And seeing no other person wanting to speak in the queue, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Okay, we are on item number 4 and 5. Mr. Toledano, are these going to be brought together, or you want to do them? Okay. So we have item number 4, Jeffrey Shane appealing the zoning commission denial on May 1st, 2018 to rezone 2.988 acres located north of Strain Road, east of Highway 59, being located in 1 and Manzana subdivision from A-2 Suburban District to A-7 Multifamily Residential District. That's in Ward 4, District 5. Hold on, we're going to bring them together. Item number 5 also is included, Jeffrey Shane appealing the zoning commission denial of May 1st, 2018 to rezone 13.6 acres located north of Strain Road, east of Highway 59 from I-2 Industrial District to A-7 Multifamily Residential District. Okay. They'll be heard together, but they will be voted on separately. Mr. Shane, would you like to begin? As you know, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. For the record, Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent the petitioner and appellant in both of the cases, which is Black Oak Holdings, LLC. I would like to start by asking, I want to make sure I understand how we're going to try to proceed. I'll have 10 minutes for both cases.
We can,
I didn't know how many cards had been submitted.
we have right now, why don't we go with, since we're combining the two, we have essentially, why don't we start, you have the 10 minutes and the 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then there's 3 minutes for discussion afterwards. If you think you need additional time, up to 10 minutes after that, we can add that to the conversation if you believe it's necessary, or the other side believes it's necessary for additional 10 minutes, since we're combining the two and they're overlapping issues.
Sure. I
Okay.
appreciate the clarification. Thank
All
you. If I could, I would like to start the discussion by giving you a history of this case. This matter was filed, I think actually in December of 2017, as a request for A7, which is multiple family residential district on 16.32 acres on Strain Road, just east of Highway 59. It actually, the two cases are because they are two different parcels. The westerly 13.32 acres of the 16.32 acres is currently zoned I-2 Industrial District. The easterly 3 acres, which abuts that 13.32 acres, is currently zoned A2. When I began this case, my client engaged Humphreys and Associates, a leading national multifamily residential architect firm out of Dallas, and he put together an approximately $30 million, 272 apartment project proposed on the 16.32 acres. Before filing the case, I met with Councilman Toledano, because it's of course in his district, as I always meet with the council person where I'm going to be filing a new zoning case, and explained to him in general terms what my client's vision was and what he hoped to accomplish. Mr. Toledano cautioned me that he had extreme reservations about the possibility of a multifamily project or zoning being successful at that location, not only because of infrastructure concerns along Highway 59, but because of the residential character of Strain Road and its traditional fine neighborhood as being a collection of residences. The cases were filed. The staff recommended denial as it relates to each request. We proceeded to the Zoning Commission. The case was tabled, I think technically a total of 3 months, in hopes of having a community meeting, at which time we were trying to assemble data that typically was not needed for a zoning hearing, but data that is certainly understandably very important, such as a traffic study, wetlands considerations, availability of central sewer and water, and the like. We were unable to ever have a community meeting, as the Zoning Commission believed at its May meeting that it was time for these cases to move forward. And I think it's fair to say that by a resounding vote, the Zoning Commission rejected the request for A7 zoning as it relates to each parcel. And I don't believe that there was anyone that came to the podium other than myself that was in support of the request. I've been on an island before by myself. So from that experience, we went back to the well and we listened carefully to what the residents told us at the May Zoning Commission meeting, what we understood in general to be the sentiment of some of the zoning commissioners, because they approached us after the Zoning Commission meeting and told us very simply that the project was beautiful and great, but it was in the wrong location, and they felt that if there was going to be a change of zoning, that it should be to some form of single-family zoning. Once again, I went back to Mr. Toledano, who reminded me of his strong words of caution early on. And I told him I didn't need to be reminded because I had just gone to school as it relates to whether or not multifamily would be an appropriate zoning on Strain Road. But believing that the property could still be perhaps rezoned and perhaps utilized in a highest and best use that would not only be good for my client, but would also be compatible with the many residents that live on Strain Road, we then explored the possibility of amending the applications, both cases, from A7 to A4A, which is a single-family residential district. It would require that we have lots at a minimum of 60 feet, provide necessary recreation areas within the subdivision development, and that would give us an opportunity to stay within the same zoning classification in terms of family, residential, the A zones, if you will, yet obviously select, in our view, a much more modest zoning classification, and also by limiting the development to 55 lots, we suggested that we would grant a deed restriction during the subdivision process that would assure all that there would be a restriction that ran with the land in perpetuity that would be enforceable by all of the residents of Strain Road, so that there would never be more than 55 lots at that location. A week ago this evening, May 31st, Mr. Taladana, flanked by Council Mr. Han, hosted a meeting that involved my client, our team, and selected representatives of the community, those that had stepped forward, if you will, and had expressed greatest concerns and had shown the most leadership as it relates to this case. We thank Mr. Taladana for that opportunity, and although that meeting, as do many meetings, had its ups and downs, as a result of that meeting, I'm happy to say that those that were in attendance that evening with myself, my client, and the development team have come to consensus that we believe that the best course of action that we ask you to consider this evening would be to accept a request that both cases be amended formally from A7 to A4A, that each appeal would be overridden, and that you see fit to pass a resolution introducing an ordinance for A4A that would then come before you next month for adoption. I have filed a formal letter with your clerk as I began the hearing this evening, and each of you have a copy before you which states what I have just read into the record, with the further caveat, as is shown in the letter, that during the subdivision process, my client would confect a deed restriction in favor of all of the residents of Strain Road that would assure them that not only would the property only be developed as single family, but it would not have more than 55 lots. I think it should be of further interest not only to you, but to the general public, that by making this amendment, this case now falls within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, which means that this case will not only have this public hearing that we are involved in this evening, it will have a public hearing next month as it relates to consideration of adoption of the zoning ordinance, and then this project must engage in the Planning Commission process, the subdivision ordinance 499, and go before your Planning Commission for public hearings for tentative, preliminary, and ultimately final subdivision approval. That is the history of where we are. We're appreciative of the fact that Mrs. Couvillon and others have listened to us, and hopefully they will agree that we have certainly carefully listened to them. And at the end of the day, my suggestion to you is that you have a grand opportunity to remove an existing 13.32 acre parcel zoned I-2 from a residential area on Strain Road. couple it with the other 3 acres, and allow for, in my view, a modest single-family residential development, which will include central sewer and water and all of the other typical amenities that you see in modern subdivision development today. With those comments, I would formally amend as per the letter given to the clerk, and any time that I may have remaining, I will use in rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. All right, we've received 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. You have 10 minutes. I don't know how y'all want to divide the time between yourselves. And who wants to go to the podium first? There's.
Hello, Leslie Levins. I live at 22319 Strain Road. Been there for 30 years. And
Excuse us one moment, sir. We're going to start the clock for you over
Okay.
again and then let you start.
Leslie
Yes, sir.
Levins, Strain Road. Been there 30 years. I'm also a real estate appraiser. Been doing it for 27 plus years. You know, I was very adamant against the apartments because I felt like that was not the highest and best use to that particular piece of property, just because of density and ingress and egress to the road. I've heard the alternatives to this piece of property that they're proposing. I went to a meeting. I thought it was a meeting that was going to be more of a question and answer section. Unfortunately, it was more of a listen to a proposal, and I'm from a design build person that I like to ask questions during the thing. I asked a couple of questions to Mr. Shane. He got frustrated. I got frustrated, so I excused myself from the meeting because there was no use to inflame already intense situations. So, but I did get the alternative that they were proposing. We went back and talked to the homeowners that are really adjacent to this particular project, because the proposal, what people don't realize, they keep telling me they want this to stay I-2 because they think it's going to stay vacant forever. Well, I got news for them. It's not going to stay vacant forever because the developer has plans to either do a collision center with a storage yard next to it, and he has a couple of other options, or the proposed 55-unit subdivision. As an appraiser, for the people's specific value of their properties near the 55-unit subdivision will be more beneficial to them than the collision center or in some other industrial use. But that's up to them. I'm just telling you, as an appraiser, I think that's the best standpoint. Only if there's teeth in the agreement that there's only going to be 55 homes and not any loopholes where I've seen in other subdivisions where they start out at a certain number and there's a loophole or guideline they can double or increase the houses. As long as it's deed restricted and whatever the most binding. Unfortunately, Mr. Bowers is taking a lot of heat because, one, I don't think it's typically him personally. I think it was the project. I think there's a lot of frustration from the general public. As the density increases, our roads are underdeveloped. I think that's a big concern. So I think a lot of it was directed more at the council. It was a do-or-die situation here where they wanted to try to defeat this project at all costs. But as an appraiser, and I think it's going to be a better move for the people surrounding it. And I'm actually on Strain Road, but further back, so the impact on me will be lessened. But, I think the zoning commission and the council has the most responsible part of this whole equation, and I think we should look at more responsible development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have 3 more people that have requested to speak. Ms. Stevens?
Terry Lewis Stevens. I'm an architect. I'm in favor of the residential zoning on this project because I think for the corridor of 59, it could be an improvement. It'll be an aesthetic improvement. I think it's a good thing. But at this point in time tonight, it's inappropriate for you to vote on this because, A, the sunshine laws require 24 hours notice. The people should have had a notice beforehand that there was the option or there was the discussion to change it to A4A. A4A is a 60-foot lot. That's below the minimum, and certainly in St. Tammany Parish, which is with as much acreage as we have here, they could go A4 with a 90-foot lot. They could go A3, 3 houses per acre. They could go A2. There's lots of other options that should be reviewed and should be considered, especially with relation to traffic, drainage, sewer, water. Even if they're going to put individual septic tanks or a treatment plant in or marry on to another treatment plant, they still should send this, you should send this back to the zoning department as a new request. They're going from A2 to A4A. That's an increase in density. Any way you look at it, it could be construed as arbitrary and capricious. The other lot is I2, which is they're proposing to go to A4A. Again, let the zoning department, the zoning board do their job. Let them help you, guide you, stay within the confines or within the comprehensive zoning that was undertaken at great time and expense. Let them do their job to help you do your job to protect the citizens and the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more cards. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kelly Vest. I live on Robert Road, which is kind of adjacent to the Strain Road. I drive on that tiny little two-lane road every day and can't get out onto Highway 59 already. So my concerns are absolutely the infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure that has not been updated since before Hurricane Katrina, and the population increase is exponential. And I think we need to look at fixing the infrastructure before we put in something, which these are high-density lots that they're talking about. This is not the average 1 acre or more that we all have back there. My other concern is, Mr. Shane mentioned this time a modest development. The last time we were at a meeting, he mentioned that he was bringing in much-needed diversity to this area. Now, I would like to know what he means by modest, because I think that means low income, possibly Section 8. These properties could turn into rentals. And I also would like Mr. Shane to clarify what exactly he means by bringing in much-needed diversity, because we are already a racially diverse community. We have a difference of mobile homes to homes that are worth close to $400,000. So I think that we're already diverse, and I would like those 2 issues to be addressed by Mr. Shane, rather than changing plans on the 11th hour with absolutely no notice to the rest of us, so that we could prepare to have our arguments presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Shannon Dardar. I live at 22186 Strain Road. I'm not in favor or disagree with the building of the houses or the industrial part. They're going to build something. I know this. The main thing I'm worried about is when they build this, they get special treatment, meaning people with money. But the little people off of Strain Road, Robert Road, Hoffman Road, we go in to get simple things done. And it seems like as long as you don't have money, you don't get what you want. Nothing happens. But you have money, things happen. My main concern is this is a rural area with all these houses being built here. Our ordinance is going to change so my son can't ride his dirt bike on the 4.5 acres we have at any time till 11 o'clock because, it's allowed. There's other changes that are going to happen. Are we going to have to keep up with the Joneses of these houses? I'm a single mother. I live on a paycheck to paycheck basis. Some of these people don't, some of them do. Are things going to change so it's harder for us to get anything done on our properties since these houses are going to be built? I mean, I'm for it because they're going to build anyway. I'd rather the 55 homes than 270 units. But are we going to be stuck in a catch-22, whereas anything we do, we have to keep up with the houses that are being built, or, just things that happen and y'all decide, oh, well, it's a subdivision now. Now everybody's got to live under the homeowners. Well, I've been having a broken lawnmower for 2 years. I got to use a bobcat with a bush hog to cut my grass. So I don't want to be stuck in a situation where rules are going to be changed for the rural area when you're cramming this, or this is getting built anyway, regardless. I just hate to see other things change, so we can't live as a rural area and not as turning into high-dollar subdivisions that everybody's wanting to move into, because this is like she said, a mixed area. So, but are the ordinances going to change too? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more point. The meeting that took place with some of the representatives from the neighborhood breaks all the rules. It shouldn't have happened. We had a community meeting, they didn't attend, they were invited. I was there because all this will affect me in an indirect way, but it should not have happened. It should not have happened behind closed doors. It should not have happened with 3 attorneys present and no attorney for the residents. There was an attorney invited. There wasn't they didn't have the option, or maybe they did, but they didn't have the means to bring an attorney with them. So it was highly inappropriate to go in, have suggested to them that they had no say in the matter. As you heard, they believe it will be developed. This isn't necessarily going to be developed at all. Mr. Bowers has only a contract on the property. He does not own the property, so cannot offer a deed restriction on a property he doesn't own yet. There are problems that cannot be resolved or should not be resolved by a vote tonight. It should go back to zoning, slow it back down, do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane, I believe that there's a rebuttal time, 5 minutes to each side.
Thank you. With regard to the comments that we've just heard, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that those that came to the podium that live on Strain Road and have been a part of the discussions and have stepped forward and suggested that they were leaders of their community support the proposal that's before you this evening. A gentleman by the name of Ron Caruso, who owns 6 acres on the south side of Strain Road, directly across from this property, could not come this evening. He's out of town. But I'll tell you that he was at the meeting last week, and he's very supportive for obvious reasons, because it probably has more impact on his property than anyone's property, and he obviously would prefer to see single-family residential across the street as opposed to I-2, and certainly he was never in support of A7. With all due respect to Ms. Stevens, we do a good job of disagreeing. There was no community meeting in this case. One was requested by me, I think, for 3 consecutive months, but one was never granted or allowed, if you will, condoned by the Zoning Commission. As far as the meeting last week, that meeting was facilitated by Mr. Toledano, as often council persons do when there are cases that come to you in your district and it's obvious that there are people that have differing views. There was no formal meeting. There were no other councilmen present. There's no violation of sunshine law. There's actually an expression of democracy and advocacy and giving people the opportunity to speak. I know for sure that Ms. Couvillon had every opportunity to bring within reason whoever she wanted to the meeting. And Mr. Levins is correct. Portions of the meeting were not as smooth as they could have been, and I apologize to the extent that I was a part of that. But as I said previously, at the end of the day, that discussion was very productive because it made all of us not only listen to each other, but it certainly made my client and I think about what might be the best resolution to this case. It should be understood that even if this property were zoned A2, requiring density of 1 unit per acre, that your ordinances require central sewer and water. In this instance, the parish does not have the capacity at the Little Creek Sewer Plant to provide sewer. That's no fault of the parish. It's just that that plant has no additional capacity. So my client is going to pay a significant sum of money to have sewer run by H2O utility system, another private utility company, from Alamosa Park, so that we can do the environmentally sensitive and right thing, and that is to have central sewer and water in this subdivision. With regard to the suggestion that the process is not being observed, I think it's really very simple. The case that was filed as it relates to each property said, please consider a change of zoning from I-2 to A7. The amendment this evening now asks you to please consider changing the zoning from I-2 not to one of the most extreme residential zones of I-7, but to something more modest. And my use of the word modest, and I think it's an adjective, but it's to compare the A7 zoning, which was a suggested 272 units, to the 55 units that are requested and will be capped in this A4A zoning, a mere 20% of what the original request was. The word diversity was used to suggest that the multifamily project would have brought a different form of residential housing on Strain Road. The only type housing you have now on Strain Road is single family. The introduction of multifamily would be something different, and that was simply my use of the term diversity, and if it's inaccurate or misleading, it certainly was not meant to be in either case. My developer has not received special treatment from anyone. We have received fair treatment, and I said it very simply in my opening remarks. We ended up on our rear end with this case. What we sought, what we asked for, what the staff thought about it, what the zoning commission did. But I think we did something very responsible. We listened to the people at the zoning commission meeting. We listened to the councilman that represents the area. We listened to the leaders when we met and tried to discuss these issues last Thursday night. And we bring to you a proposal tonight that is fair and will provide harmony and will be very competitive with Strain Road. Thank you for your time.
The other side also has a 5-minute rebuttal to share between each person.
Tonight, what you're asked to do is review the appeal of the A7. Nothing more, nothing less. The fact that they would bring forth today, June 7th was the date in the letter that I saw, asking for an amendment is highly inappropriate. It's just not appropriate. Tonight is about A7. The zoning board voted, what, 10-0? A7 was not appropriate. They've agreed A7 is not appropriate. The neighborhood, to their credit, has reached out. Mr. Bowers, to his credit, has reached out. They've talked about all the ways that residential could work out, could be good, and the residents would embrace it. But it needs to go back to zoning. They need to have more discussions with Mr. Bowers and Mr. Shane to determine what's appropriate, how large it should be, how small it should be, what all the terms and conditions are, what the deed restrictions would be. All that should be ironed out before you vote again. So I would ask that you do that. Thank you.
Hi there. Mr. Shane mentioned that there was no violation of sunshine laws. However, I think if you take a deep breath, you will smell, and it does not pass the smell test. I don't know how someone was chosen to be the leader of the community, but all of this meeting that took place, I'm hearing last Thursday, was done behind closed doors without any notification to the rest of the community. And with all due respect, Ms. Couvion does not speak for all of us. So I would request that we have a community meeting that is properly advertised, that everyone can attend, to keep this a democratic process and to keep St. Tammany Parish beautiful and a great place for us to live and a great place for us to pass on, because we are stewards of this land. And we should not be looking to rush anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A lot of the residents are hung up on the 60-foot lots, and a lot of people, when they think of 60-foot lots, don't get upset till I finish my statement, is a lot of people around here pass through Tammany Hills, and they think that's what's going to go in there. But Mr. Bowers is here to make a profit. I can show you Terabella, where they got 40-foot lots. Houses are selling for anywhere from $350,000 to $425,000. I can show you Maison de Lac, Their lots are only 60 foot, and they're selling over $400,000. So it's not the matter of the lot, if that's what the residents here are concerned about. It's the quality of the house that he's going to put on it and the amenities he's going to put in the subdivision. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, there's still 3 minutes on the rebuttal. Well, what I would suggest then, if you don't want to use the 3 minutes, is we'll go into discussion. Normally, occasionally, there's conclusion. It would be limited to 3 minutes, but since we're combining these two matters, what I'll do is allow each side up to 5 minutes in the conclusion before we go to vote. Is that amenable to all the parties? Since they're being consolidated? Okay, so and if for some reason we think we need to move that to 6 minutes, we can do that. All right, so starting with, we have Mr. Teledano, you would like to speak.
Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, what I would like to do is to place a motion on the floor first,
Okay.
if you will,
Yes,
and
sir.
then have the right to discuss same with the hopeful second to follow my motion. And that motion is specifically this, and the motion pertains to both of the cases. I move to override the zoning commission's denial of the applicant's rezoning to A7, considering the request submitted into the record requesting A4 rezoning, and subject to the introduction of an ordinance reflecting the change to A4, which will be introduced later tonight and should appear on our agenda in July. And I would propose that is the motion that I would like to discuss. Hey, did I say A4A? Pardon me. Thank you. I misspoke.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. Thompson. And then we have a number of members in the, do I need two motions and seconds since it's two different matters? Okay, so we'll just take the first one, we can come back, okay. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Celadano, you had more to say?
No, I would just like to have the first right of discussion, if you don't.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
sir, please, continue.
Thank you. Is my mic on?
Yes, you're
I'm not
sitting
sure.
far away from it. Make
Okay,
sure you-
part of it.
Yes.
First, I want to say that I am appreciative of all of the people who came here tonight to express their opinion, be it for or against, and I'm very appreciative of the many people that contacted me on this. The overwhelming consensus of the people that contacted me was they were dead set against multifamily. And Mr. Shane was a little bit polite to me for reasons that I'm appreciative when he said I expressed reservation. I told Mr. Shane that that was going to be an uphill battle in every sense of the word. However, I believe in the democratic process. That is to say, Mr. Bowers, who I had never met before in my life, wanted to make an effort to rezone this multifamily. It's America. He deserved the right to do so. But I made it clear to Mr. Shane that to use an expression from the country, dog would probably never hunt. So they did follow the process. We got some tremendous input. And the lady whose name was called out, Ms. Couvillon, very early on in the process took the lead. And I said to her many times that I was not only appreciative, but I admired the amount of dissemination of information she did, the words she got out, and how articulate she was in opposition to the A7. To say that she represented her community well is an understatement. She did an outstanding job. And and a much deserving applause for that. And she carried that argument to Mr. Shane. I believe she had some personal conversations with the proposed purchaser and developer. She did exactly what we're supposed to do in this parish and in this government, to express your opinion and move to what is best for the community. All this time, I believed and was told by many residents that this should be single family. And that was my impression, And I go further to say that it was apparent to me in my discussions with those residents that most of them were absolutely floored when they found out it was I-2. Among those people who were floored for a brief moment was myself, because I did not fully orient that portion of Strain was industrial. Now, lest we ever think about this for a moment and take the opportunity not to shoot ourselves in the foot, I suggest to you that through the fate of luck and God, because I believe in God, we have an opportunity to do something very good for Strain Road, because in today's world on Strain Road, industrial at that site to me is absolutely inappropriate. So, and I don't even have to tell you how bad it would be, but anybody who's interested, they need only go look at the options in I-2, and you would say, how quick can I get my for sale sign up on my house? But the reality is it wouldn't sell once that portion became I-2. So that having been said, I do compliment Mr. Bowers that he did listen very carefully to not only the group that Ms. Couvion put together to meet at Coop Drive, which was a perfectly legal undertaking, but he also listened to many other people. And unlike some developers who are too hard-headed to do what people are telling him to do, he got that message. So this property can, and I believe now, and should be residential. Now, the point was made by, I believe, the lady, Miss Stevens, and the other lady whose name I didn't catch completely, that, well, we want this to go back to the zoning board. You only need look around this room and know that going back to the zoning board is not going to serve a purpose or a benefit for any of us in this room. This case will end right here in this room ultimately. So the concern of some people, and it's an understandable concern until I think we explain this tonight, is we want the opportunity for input. Some of the things that Ms. Stevens said about we want the opportunity for input actually have nothing at all to do with the zoning commission and would not be a part of that discussion. But at some point in time, we do have a mechanism in this parish, par excellent, better than most, to allow that input. So what will happen here is not only do we begin to discuss it tonight and people continue to listen, but it comes before us in a July meeting for a public hearing. In other words, we are not rezoning this property tonight. That is not going to happen. But it's obvious to me and some of the people that I've spoken to, they think, my Lord, they're going to rezone it tonight. They're pulling this over someone's eyes. They're going to do it at the last moment, shove it down someone's throat. None of that is true. Zero. This is only tonight an opportunity for all of us to get this property out of I-2 by the beginning of the process, because thereafter there will be a hearing in July, and that hearing will give you and all of us an opportunity to talk about the appropriate things at the zoning level if you should come in and say, wait a second, I'd rather it be industrial. And quite frankly, I've said to some people that we would almost have to be having a bad day on earth to think that we'd rather an industrial plant site next to our residence. So the next part, and this is very important, it speaks to what the lady, Miss Stevens, said before, and that is this. The Planning Commission phase will give you and I, if you will, at some point in time, 3 additional public hearings to discuss some of the particulars of this development. For instance, access. For instance, traffic studies. For instance, what I've already talked about in terms of road design, to assure that this development of only 55 homes, bear in mind, we started with the gentleman who wanted to put 276 units, and although he would have had to knock me down to get that approved, quite frankly, but that's what it started out to. So in the Planning Commission, you and I and this council will have input to assure that all the particulars of that development are well done, appropriate, and do not impose a burden on your property or anybody else who travels on Strain Road. So where does that leave us today? My motion is designed not to do anything with finality tonight, but it's to first make sure that, one, industrial is on the way out of the door and multifamily is gone forever, because that is not satisfactory, I believe, to virtually anybody. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mr. Shane and his client got the drift of that. So for us to sit here tonight and be critical of the process in this particular case, and I've consulted with legal counsel, and I'll ask legal counsel to speak to this, the process works to our advantage, because here's a couple of things that could happen. Mr. Biles could walk away from this deal and that property stays I2, excuse me. Thus the second time I said that, so I'll get Mr. Thompson to continue to slap me when I misspeak, and I appreciate that. But it could stay I2. Now, what would happen then? Well, you would say, well, it ought to be rezoned from I2 because everybody agrees. So now listen to this quandary we would find ourselves in. It would take a minimum of 7 months to in excess of 1 year to accomplish this. Now, mind you, stays I2, the owners, whoever they are, I don't know the name of who they might be, gets an offer from Ace Fabricators or some other industrial operation. You think they're going to turn it down? No way in God's green earth will they turn that offer down. So it would take us, if we undertook that process ourselves as a council, a minimum of 7 months to a year. We would have to first have a study, a request a study for a small to large study of that specific area. That takes 3 to 6 months on the best day. Then after the receipt of those recommendations, there needs to be a motion to rezone that property within the study, and that will be sent to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That would take another 2 to 4 months. After the receipt of that, from the Zoning Commission, then there would be a decision process that would take 2 to 3 months. And I've said this once before the meeting, and I'm just hard-headed about this. I listen respectfully to everybody who comes in this room. Every phone call I try to return, every letter. So it's only fair that when somebody up here, and it doesn't have to be me, when they speak, people should be respectful of that. Point of fact is, for those people who are listening tonight, the important thing is that we have a way to avoid the danger of this property getting sold and used as I2. It is the luckiest thing that could happen to those of us who care about the residential area of Strain Road. So lest you not be worried that, well, I'm not going to have a voice in this. To the contrary, you're going to have a voice on a multiple number of occasions. And I encourage you to come out and give Mr. Shane and his client input to say, well, if you think that, for whatever it might be, the design of the layout, the traffic pattern, all of those things. And during this period of time, Mr. Fontenot's group and the engineering group will be protecting the interests of all of us out there by making sure the traffic studies, the routing of traffic, road design, all of those things will be attended to. So with that having been said, and I do appreciate people listening to that, but I think it's important for people to know that gentlemen like Mr. Levins, Ms. Couvillon, a lady's name who has a beautiful name, but I have trouble pronouncing, Michelin, I believe it is. These people came to that meeting to do the right thing for all of us involved in Strain Road, and they were very good advocates for you and towards us, and for the developer to listen to know that, one, A7 does not hunt. Single family is a good thing for that community. We'll protect it. So for all those reasons, ladies and gentlemen on the council, I hope you would favorably consider the motion I made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Toledano. Next in the queue, Mr. Groby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened to this. Part of my district is right up 59. I have Hoffman Road, Robert Road, Autumn Wind subdivision. That subdivision, of course, would have been impacted if an apartment complex would have been built. Hearing both sides of this, I have a couple of questions. It may be proper for Mr. Levin to answer, or it may be proper for Mr. Shane. I'll fall back to Mr. Shane for a moment. If you would come up.
Sir.
Right now, in the general area, as the zoning commission has looked at, what is the median price of the homes based on, the surrounding area, roughly?
I have ridden Strain Road in the last 4 to 5 months, probably 20 times, and I'm not a real estate appraiser.
Okay.
But I would tell you that you'd see values that probably range from 150 to maybe as high as 300.
Okay.
And I don't mean to slight anyone, maybe there's some at 4 or 5.
Okay.
But you said Strain Road, correct?
Correct, the corridor.
Yeah, that
Right.
corridor of Strain Road, I think as you get back into the more developed subdivision areas, the values might be different,
Okay.
further east, but that would be my guess.
Okay. The proposed 55 tract homes that, the proposed 55 homes that are being asked to be considered, what is the median cost of their homes?
That has not been determined, but our best guess will probably be between the 250,000 plus or minus range. In fact, we've actually said on one occasion 250 to 3.
Okay.
But I want to make sure the record's clear. It's not as if we have developed a finite subdivision plan, come up with the model home that we would build there. But the cost of the home, in part, is directly proportionate to the infrastructure that we have to bring in. And when you called me, in fact, you remember our conversation?
Months ago.
Yeah.
I know for sure that our public water supply cannot take the load, and I didn't know where the sewage was going.
But you called because you wanted to make sure that this project would have central sewer and water. And I think you're pretty familiar with central sewer and water. So the cost of bringing that amenity, and I might add, there's no one else on Strain Road that has central sewer and water. That is what in large part is going to drive up the cost of the homes. Not central sewer and water only, but the other costs that are incumbent with development. We don't begrudge those costs. That is part of good development in St. Tammany Parish. The standards that you and this council have set, they require developers to do a variety of things to mitigate the impacts to all of us in the public.
The other questions I had is, you referred that there was a meeting last week. What day was that?
Last Thursday, May 31st.
Last Thursday, so 1 week ago today. All right.
And it was all over the Facebook page and all over various, I know the Facebook that you participated in for, a couple of months that we watched. It was very obvious to anyone that had an interest in the case of this upcoming meeting.
I spoke to Ms. Kuvion earlier this evening, and I've talked to her on and off for the last week. I have no personal objection to the 55 homes. I truly believe the 55 homes are better than industrial and certainly better than an apartment. I get it, okay? What I have an objection to is the way, and Mr. Toledano knows how I feel about it. The way we're doing this tonight just seems wrong. And I mean this not as a slight, but to get this letter the night of the council meeting, when you had a meeting last Thursday, when you could have mailed it to us then, give us a little bit of time to kind of chew on this. You know better, and you've done better, Mr. Shane. It's not a slight, it's just, there could have been a better way to do this. The second thing.
May I respond to that?
Yes, sir.
Because I think it would be important to you. There's a reason it wasn't done until tonight. Only as of Tuesday evening was the consensus opinion of the people that we were dealing with expressed that that would be a proposal that they would support. Had I learned that a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I can promise you, the meeting last Thursday night, coming into that meeting, there was no consensus for A4A or for 55 units. So the minute that consensus was developed, we put, obviously, this proposal together, and the first opportunity to file it into your record is at this public hearing tonight.
You couldn't, well, you emailed it earlier to us as council members. I got the email. So you couldn't have emailed it yesterday?
I didn't email it to you.
I've received it in an email, and I'll find it, but that's okay. But the reason I brought up the
But wait a minute,
cost
though. You got an email from me?
I can't remember, but I got
No,
it in an email.
let's remember.
Okay,
This is important.
okay. I
You
don't
did not get an
remember, but I
email
saw
from
this in an
me of this
email.
letter. This letter was not filed until tonight. That's part of the problem, is that, let's get the facts straight.
Okay.
The letter was not filed until this evening.
Okay.
A copy of the letter was provided to Ms. Couvion, I believe, Tuesday evening. I think it was either
That may be where I saw it then.
It might be
Okay,
where you
all right.
got it.
All right. Well, the reason I asked about the cost of the homes is that the medium cost right now is between 150 to 300,000 roughly. The proposed cost, if everything goes in, are around 250 to or higher. When the assessor comes around in 4 years and he does the assessments based on the group sales in that area, the people who are existing now are going to be impacted by the higher cost homes. They're going to have to go up in their property tax a little bit, as I have appreciated, because that's some of the things that we discuss when we do the tax review. Like I said, the median price of selling homes are when they go in through their property values, it goes up, and it's going to, if it sells, it increases. As each house sells, it will increase the property tax based on the active sale. So it will get a little increase. But the issue is, I'm going to go back to the original point. Everybody for right now is generally agreeable to the 55 homes for the most part. The active majority, I should say, correct?
It would seem to me, yes,
Okay.
sir.
If everybody and your client agrees, then it should be a walk in the park for you to go back to zoning and ask for them. Because my concern is if it goes back, once it goes back to zoning, or if it goes back to zoning, they may not agree with the A4A. They may ask for wider, I don't know. Do they have 60-foot lots anywhere in that immediate area where these they're bigger or smaller? Call the order, please.
Mr. Garber, you need to direct your questions. Mr. Shane's up front. Are you asking him a question?
Yes.
You're not asking the audience.
No, I'm asking him.
Well, Mr. Shane, do you have the knowledge or not to answer the questions?
I'll be glad to answer the question, but I would appreciate the same courtesy and respect that I think Mr. Toledano asked for a little while ago.
I agree.
Okay.
With regard, your question is,
You're proposing 60-foot wide lots in the 55 plan
are
subdivision.
there any other 60-foot lots in the
I'm
area?
asking what are the general lot sizes around?
I do
that-
not have knowledge of any 60-foot lots on Strain Road or any area east of Strain Road. I would think that the closest lots of comparable size would be Lexington at I-12 and Little Creek Road. That's not on Strain Road, but I mean, you asked in the area, that's probably within 3/4 of a mile or a mile. And I'm not sure of the exact size of the lots in that development, but I suspect that they are comparable to the lots that we're discussing.
Okay, that's
And
the
the house
questions I
values
wanted
as
to get
well.
it out. It seems like we're putting this before. I know it's got to be a public hearing, I got that. But if you're so sure and everybody is in agreement, then you know the process well. Just walk it through the park and do it the proper steps. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Belisario. You should be.
Mine will be quick. I've gone through this before over the years. You can change the zoning, and I want Mr. Hand to confirm that. What you're looking at is a down zoning within residential. There's no reason to send it back to the zoning commission. Thank you.
Mr. Hand? You should be on. All right. You were there, you hit the button. Hold on, I'll put you back on. There you go.
That is absolutely correct.
This property was properly advertised for a public hearing, and a public hearing was held. A recommendation was then forwarded to this council. Once this council receives a recommendation from the zoning commission, so long as the property description remains the same, they have the ability and in fact the legal authority to then make a recommendation to accept the zoning commission's for what was forwarded, change it, amend it, and then they vote on it. But their vote then goes to the next meeting for further discussion. So that's the process. That's the process that is going to be followed in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Mr. Lorino, you're next. Jude.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Shane, would you mind coming up again? First of all, I want to thank you for explaining the way you have explained it. I know this is your profession, and I just appreciate that. But I just want to say a couple of things. The first thing is, I'm very glad we went down from the apartments to the smaller size house, single family. I still have a major concern with traffic, infrastructure, and things like that, especially in my district, District 4. So, you know, I know this is not in District 4. So I just wanted to say that. So I appreciate going down. That's a step in the right direction, but I think we all need to look at some more steps along the way. Secondly, I think Mr. Hand answered the question. My issue is not tonight going from one to the other. It's more so, is it legal for me to go from one to the other? That's my issue. And I think Mr. Hand answered that question for me. I'm going to ask him again. Terry, if we do this, if this passes, like Mr. Toledano is asking, is it something, and do we have any cases or anything like that that would back it up? Because since I've been on the council, this has never happened. I understand Mr. Balisero, and I believe him, but it's something that I'm thinking about.
Historically, in the zoning realm, this goes back to a case, Palermo, which is one of the leading cases on zoning. It's a Louisiana Supreme Court case, and it discusses zoning, and it confirms that the governing authority of the parish, whether it be a police jury or a council, has the ultimate zoning decision and authority over zoning matters. The Louisiana statutes require that there first be an appearance before, if you have a zoning commission, which this case did, and a recommendation came out of that hearing, and it's now before you. You then have the authority, because you are the ultimate decision maker on this, to render a decision on it. But as I said before, it is not the final decision, in that the only potential outcome is the introduction of an ordinance which by law is required to lay over for 30 days, and then there's going to be another hearing on that ordinance. You have previously seen on zoning matters a zoning ordinance come before you, and at the council level, it was removed. The zoning was killed on it. So yes, there is precedent, and there's precedent in the case law relative to this issue.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Jeff, I'm sorry. You know, one of the other things that you and I have discussed at certain times, and something I discussed with Mr. Fontenot, is that, you know, we get these cases and then we talk about them going to planning, highway, drainage, traffic, all of those things. And I know it never happened, but I would like to see it all come to us under one lump sum, but there's many reasons why you can't do that, and I understand that. But I'm more interested in, this is going to go to traffic, and traffic will look at what you're proposing with these houses and evaluate whether or not 59 can handle this additional traffic.
Yes, sir, absolutely. If the zoning is adopted next month, we will, at that point in time, we have a parcel that has zoning but literally is undevelopable until and unless the property goes through the subdivision process, and the subdivision process will require, for subdivisions of 50 lots or more, the submission of a traffic impact analysis report prepared by the developer, his consultant, for review by your traffic engineer section, ultimately for debate by the Planning Commission, and if a party sees fit to appeal that decision to the council for your discussion and review.
Okay, really, one other question. It was said that there was no community meetings. Would y'all elaborate on that for me?
Yes, sir. Somewhat ironically, I knew that the A7 case, because of the number of units, would produce significant impacts, particularly to traffic, also to drainage, also some other considerations. What I tried to do was I anticipated, and I may have outthought myself, but I anticipated that the primary concerns of not only the residents of Strain Road, but citizens that use the Highway 59 corridor would be the traffic considerations. So what I attempted to do, no, what we actually did was we procured a traffic impact analysis study from Sain and Associates, but I went a step further. I got the Parish Traffic Engineer Department to attend a meeting in Hammond with LADOTD. And I asked them to study our traffic impact analysis to see if they thought the project might work at that location, and if so, what highway improvements might be needed. I attempted to defer the first zoning commission hearing on this case until I got a pronouncement from LADOTD. I was never able to get a pronouncement from LADOTD, and the zoning commission, I think, it's just my opinion, but I think they felt the people in the audience had been patient. They had come out 3, maybe 4 months in a row, and they wanted to move on the action. So to answer your question, although a community meeting had been requested by me, and when I say a community meeting, that is one that is ordered, for lack of a better word, by the chairman of the zoning commission. He typically appoints 2, 3, or 4 zoning commission representatives to attend. He requests that someone from staff attend. Typically, those meetings are held here, or if the property happens to be in Slidell, often at the Towers Building. We never had that opportunity. The meeting that was held last Thursday was not a zoning commission established community meeting. It was a meeting that Mr. Toledano wanted to have because he wanted input.
Okay, Jeff, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I
Thank
appreciate it.
Mr. Canulet? Hold on. Let's see. There you go.
First thing I'd like to say is, Riker, I believe you're dead on with this. This is a gift, in my opinion, compared to what I've seen in the past when you don't take advantage of a downzoning. You get a shopping center, you get a bar, diesel shop, cranes, you get it all. It's industrial. Could possibly anything. Sydney, I have one question for you. Was I-2 suitable for a waste transfer station?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure. So it would be more heavy equipment, lumber yards?
Yeah, if you remember, about 2 years ago, the waste transfer stations, those things we created solid waste management districts.
Thank you. So, but for general, for I-2, we're talking heavy equipment, machinery.
You're talking a lot of the industrial that's on Highway 59, south of North Road.
Thank you.
In your area, it would be Johnny Smith Industrial
Right.
Park.
Noisy, dirty, lots of things to go with it. The opportunity is just, I think it's too good to pass up on with this. Just the property values It's probably 2-3 times, maybe 4 times what residential is. Then they're gonna bring central sewer and central water in, not costing us anything. We don't have that right now. We don't have the funds for any of that. Matter of fact, we'll be cutting funds soon. It's even gonna be harder to get anything done. So anytime someone brings in development and they can bring in infrastructure with it, that helps us. So I think this is a very good project. Thank you.
Mr. Dean,
Yes, ma'am, thank you. No, I just got 2 things, kind of quick.
you remember what you had? You've been in the queue a long time.
I got it. I wrote it down,
Thank
so I
you,
wouldn't
Mr. Dean.
forget. 2 things. One is kind of a point of order just for my fellow council members. Let's make sure that whatever I think we're getting away from going to the chair lady, woman, out there. She has to direct traffic, so when we start picking people out of the audience, then I think we get kind of a little bit out of control. So I believe that we need to always, if I want to talk to Sydney or if I want to talk to anybody, I need to ask the chairman if I can speak to that person. It just kind of keeps order. That's my lecture for the evening. The second and probably the more important thing is I represent District 1, and I got on this council in 2004. About the first 6 years, and I think the council members can attest to this, about the first 4 to 6 years, the majority of the stuff that happened in the district was District 1. I had anywhere between 4 and 6 appeals. This room was packed nightly. We had many community meetings. They were very productive, and we got a whole lot accomplished. So it was very busy, very busy. Thankfully, it's kind of gotten shifted over a little bit to the east, away from me. But the interesting thing that I want to say is that the 3 things that people complain about most, and it still is kind of that way, but is traffic, drainage, and you're going to reduce my property value. Mr. Groby, I have never heard anybody complain that you're going to increase my property value. This is a first since 2004. So I do not understand that. I mean, you're talking about going, you're talking about going from industrial, a smelly, loud, nasty place to 55 homes. I would have given my right arm for 55 homes back several years ago, rather than 200 or 300. So anyway, I just had to say that. I ain't never heard this before. So I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. I believe, Mr. Toledano, you're next, but I would assume you'd like to speak last. Okay. Mr. Groby, you are the last remaining member in the queue.
Thank you. What I was alluding to, Councilman Dean, was I was concerned about as the property values go up, their property taxes go up. And some people's houses probably may be not able to take the impact. That's all I was alluding to, okay? Everybody's property can go up in value. I'm cool with that. I have a question for Mr. Shane, Madam Chair. May I call him up?
Mr. Shane, please.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to clarify something I may have not heard correctly. You said that as you go through the traffic studies in the future, there's a rule or a provision that if it's 50 lots or more, it requires a traffic study?
Single-family residential, I
Okay.
think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm confident that ordinance 499 requires the submission of a traffic impact analysis.
And that's for 50 home lots or more, correct? And if some future date, the developer only decides to build 49 or 45, is a traffic study still going to be done to try to figure out what the impact for the parish is going to be?
Staff will correct me if I'm mistaken. I believe if it's less than 50, a traffic impact analysis is not per se required, but it can be required by
Okay.
staff.
I just wanted to clarify.
And I think in this case, I can assure you, you will get a traffic impact analysis no matter what a number of lots we use, meaning 55 or less. We understand that's a critical issue, and we understand people should have an opportunity to voice their thoughts.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. There's 5 minutes in conclusion, I'm gonna grant, but I'm gonna let before,
I noticed Mr. Bender jumped on the board.
I did not see Mr. Bender. Okay. Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. What I wanted to, I'm going to ask Mr. Han a question, and I just want to make a comment to both sides in general over this issue. Terry.
Mr. Han.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, may I ask Mr. Han?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Han, under a normal circumstance, if we were concurring with the zoning commission denial, okay, that would be one thing. You've already explained that because it's down zoning and because of the law in the case of Palermo, correct me if I'm wrong, that Mr. Toledano can make a motion, gets a second, and we have the authority to vote on the replacement of A7 to a lesser intense zoning. Is that correct?
Palermo deals with the ultimate authority being given to the local government, whether it be a police jury or a council. That's the primary issue in Palermo. There are other cases interpreting the revised statutes that are on the book about the process that is required to take place. One of those statutes basically says you go, if there is a zoning commission, you go to the zoning commission first.
Mm-hmm.
But once a recommendation is received from the zoning commission,
right,
it comes to the council, and the council has the authority to amend it, to accept it, to reject it, deny it. So the ultimate decision rests with this council.
So the key word is amendment.
Right, right.
And
absolutely.
so we're within our authority to do what Mr. Toledano's doing. And I know this is a repetitive question, but this is for the purpose of my vote, okay?
Yes.
All right. To the people on both sides out there, first, I have to say this. I really do think Mr. Toledano has been on the ball and representing everyone from a fair standpoint, okay? My district is quite a distance away from his district, but I understand the work of the council, and you can see when a council member's involvement with both sides can lead to fruition. If I was sitting here tonight and I had to decide between keeping this I-2 or going to a 270-plus apartment complex, I wouldn't go for the 270 apartment complex, but I certainly, and this is not my district, I certainly wouldn't be comfortable with I-2 sitting right next to all of you all, okay, which I get, that are concerned about 55 single-family homes. I'm only telling you the process I've been going through in listening tonight. So what I have to think about, given Mr. Hand's legal analysis, is this. If there was another meeting, and let's just say the zoning commission came back with 48 homes, is that remarkably better than 55 homes? No. So everybody's going no. So what does it need to be? 35 homes? Is it, oh, it does. Okay. Well, what about we just leave it vacant forever? Yeah, exactly. The problem is that's not the real world that we deal in. If somebody goes to I-2 on this thing, I think Mr. Han, if I'm correct, I don't believe we could deny I-2 zoning if it met the guidelines of I-2 zoning. Am I accurate?
Are you referencing the use of it?
Yes.
Yeah, no, the use is within the permitted uses in I-2. It's automatically, they have the right to come in and ask for a permit.
And it would be there. That would be it. I just want to be clear because this is what I'm going through. If I-2 would have come in If Mr. Bowers would have said, I'm going I-2, we're virtually powerless because it's already zoned I-2. We can't deny the owner I-2. I have I-2 and I-3 in my district. I believe probably every one of us does. I got to tell you what, I wouldn't want to be sitting right next to I-2 with as concerned as you all are, which I totally understand. It's our house, it's our kingdom, it's where we live. But 272 traffic apartments versus 55 or 35, leaving it I-2 by denying everything, I got to tell you, I just have to err on the side, if you want to call it that, with good intention. I have to vote on the side of what protects the community the most. And thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Okay. We have only Mr. Toledano left in the queue. After that, we will go to 5 minutes conclusion from each side. If there's a reason to go to 6 minutes, we'll add an additional minute, and then we will go to the vote. Okay?
Thank you very much. Am I good?
Yep.
Two points, Madam Chairman. The first, the lady, Ms. Dardar, if I'm pronouncing her name right, spoke in a way that made me think that perhaps she was under the impression, maybe she had not looked at the description, and she might think that this ultimate rezoning, if it should occur, might impact her property. And in all due respect to her and the fact that she took the time to come to the podium, I want to make it clear that the uses that she called off to her property, such as with her children, will not be impacted at all. But, and I, in all fairness to her, I didn't want that to be misunderstood. The only other thing I would say, as a matter of point of order, is that at the conclusion of the vote, if the vote should be favorable to my motion, I would ask that you entertain my motions to introduce those ordinances in separate form at that time so that we will finish this block. And it will be, of course, your discretion. In the meantime, the only other thing I would say is that I do appreciate the comments of the people in the audience and will continue to listen to that, and they should continue to participate in the process that we've called off, including the July meeting. And I appreciate the comments of my fellow councilmen. So thank you very much for the time, because we've given a lot of time to this, but it deserves a lot of time.
Thank you, Mr. Toledano. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, and hopefully I don't need 6 or 5 minutes. I don't think there's a reason to go through many of the details, because we've all done a good job or bad job of rehashing those this evening. But I think it's more of a good job because these are important issues that need to be discussed. I think the issue that has probably been of greatest discussion in the last 30 minutes or so is the need to go to the Zoning Commission. And our research concurs with Mr. Hands, and that is I don't believe it's legally necessary. But also when I look at it, it's hard for me to imagine that there will be discussion or discourse at a Zoning Commission hearing that would be much different than we've had this evening. And I believe that we are likely to have similar discussion next month. So my point is simply, one, I believe it is absolutely legal to follow the path that Mr. Toledano has suggested. But number two, as a practical matter, I don't believe anyone is being deprived of anything as it relates to knowledge, input, and opportunity, particularly when we know that now as an A4A project, this project will go through the Planning Commission process. That's 3 public hearings before them, and if there are appeals, potentially 2 and maybe 3, depending on who the appellant is for final, another 3 public hearings before the council. At the end of the day, I would suggest to you that support of the motion on the floor produces the following: no more I-2, no A7, a planning commission process, and a deed restriction. And if I lived on Strain Road, I honestly think that the package I just read is one that I would embrace and want. And I think that the people I've dealt with in handling this case, and I'm referring to the people on Strain Road, that's the ones that I've interacted with in every form, face-to-face, telephone, email, etc. Those people's feedback to me and my client is that we appreciate the fact that you've looked at our concerns and that you're trying to do something that would be compatible with the investment that we have and the quality of life that we have on Strain Road. So please follow Mr. Toledano's motion this evening, and we look forward, if this zoning is adopted next month, in going through the Planning Commission process and determining what the impacts are and how they should be mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. We'll reset the clock. Okay. All right, and Ms. Stevens?
I am the lady, Miss Stevens. First of all, I take offense to the threats that were posed here tonight, the threats that were also shared at the meeting last week, that Mr. Bowers could walk away from this property. He's only got it under contract. He didn't buy it. That he could walk away, so what? It remains industrial. I don't think we even looked at the industrial map or the zoning map to know, and the city could pull it up and show you, if he so chose, it's all industrial in that area, up and down 59, because that's what you all decided to do. That's where you decided to put industrial zoning. So look at what you're saying. So now you're going to change that to residential. I told you, that's all well and fine, but tonight you're deciding just off the wall to go to A4A. Nobody presented anything to justify A4A. No one, we've already established that there are no 60-foot lots in this area at all, so this is not compatible. Earlier tonight, you denied a woman's rezoning of her large acre property because the adjacent residents all had large tracts. This is not appropriate to allow a 60-foot lot. It's not the 55 acres. You keep getting hung up on that. It's the 60-foot lot that A4A would allow them to build on. On a 16-acre lot, they could have twice that many, 3 times that many larger pieces. I don't care what's on that property as far as drainage. That's his problem. That's his problem. And if he doesn't want the land, he can walk away. There's industrial all up and down there. One of my neighbors just built an industrial facility that's not stinky, that's not loud, that's not obnoxious. There's no 18-wheelers. It's not horrible. Everyone who lives there now knows what the industrial is. They know what to expect. They're not afraid of it. So for you guys and ladies to suggest that you're doing everyone a favor by changing this to something flown off the wall, they just threw it off the wall. There's no justification for that A4. I think that's really irresponsible.
Hi there. I wanted to address the 2025 plan that was put into place, I'm not even sure how many years ago. I've sat here and listened to Mr. Shane and a few of the other council members talk about how they don't want industrial, they want to do away with industrial, but the 2025 plan calls for this to be industrial. There has to be industrial property in St. Tammany Parish. We have to be economically viable. And I'm sorry, but they're talking about putting a development with $250,000 to $300,000 houses that is downwind from a dump, that is downwind from a transfer station. Drive down Highway 59 on a summer day, it reeks. Nobody's going to spend that kind of money, $250,000 to $300,000, to live there. So I think it's twofold. We need to go back to the zoning because we have to talk about the implications of changing something from I-2. There is a finite amount of industrial land in this parish. We need to look farther into the future and think about keeping it.
Some of the residents are concerned that because a subdivision is going in there, it's going to increase their property values right off the bat. the way assessor works, every 4 years, your house gets reassessed. You have a 2-week window to protest that assessment. As an appraiser, when I go out there, if I'm pulling comps along Strain Road, I am not going to be pulling from this subdivision as a comp to price your land. So if people are worried about an instant increase in your property, it's not going to happen. I mean, if the assessment is doing his job properly, he is only going to pull from rural properties to price your land. 2 examples. The Woodlands went in next to Trailwoods, a small subdivision off of Airfield Road. The Woodlands, the Woodstone and the Sanctuary went in right to Weldon Park. The first appraisal I ever done was those people wanted to know how much would their property increase. Well, guess what? Their property increased because those subdivisions were not compatible to be compared to. So if you're worried about your property values going up just because of subdivision there, if the assessor does his job properly, those shouldn't affect your property values. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Taladana, I believe that you have a motion. I'm sorry.
Call for the question.
Okay. And so we have to take this, each matter separately.
That's correct.
All right, so we have our.
I move on item number 4, previously called off by Madam Chairman, and the motion was in accordance with what I read into the record in the beginning.
And we've already received a second on that. Please vote.
Thank you for your help.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson is a yes vote.
Okay, give me a minute.
Do we gotta do the motion second on item 5? Or-
Madam Chairman.
Wait. We need to do
Hold
the
on,
introduction
hold
of the
on.
ordinance.
Wait,
Oh, sorry.
please, hold on just a minute. I've got a variety of different things to write, votes to write down. The motion passes with 10 yeas, 1 abstention, 2 absent.
There was 1 verbal.
Yes.
That motion
So 11.
passed. As Madam Clerk calls it off, I now move.
Wait, hold on, Mr. Mr. Schoen?
I'm sorry, I probably did not hear Madam Clerk correctly. I'm not sure that the votes that she called out tallied to 14.
It did not. I did not include Mr. Thompson's because I was reading my screen. Mr. Thompson gave a verbal yes, so it's 11 yeas.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Han, I believe we have our motion or introduction.
The introduction of an ordinance. It needs to move to introduce.
You need to move to introduce the ordinance.
Madam Chairman, thank you. In accordance with the favorable vote of the previous motion,
Oops.
I now move for the introduction of the ordinance as we have called forth before.
And we just need a second. Okay, and we have a second from Mr. Belisario. So we need to do the same thing with item number 5, correct? Okay, so we need a motion and a second on item number 5.
I so move.
Okay, and Mr. Thompson seconded. All in favor? Is this right? We vote? Okay. And then we just need another introduction.
And then, Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, excuse me. Excuse me.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes, please, Madam Clerk,
Okay.
record that. And Madam Clerk, if you will please call the vote out.
The motion passes with 11 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Taladano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Out of an abundance of caution, I'll yield to you, Mr. Han. Do I need to make a separate motion
I'm
to
sorry.
override of item number 5?
That's what we just did.
I think you've done that.
Oh,
I think that's what you've done, in that it's the same identical motion you put forth on the first one, you put forth on the second one, but you do now have to introduce the ordinance.
Thank you.
To introduce changing the zoning to A4A.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Han, and thank you, Madam Chairman. In accordance with the declaration that Mr. Han called off, I move for the introduction ordinance pertaining to item number 5.
okay. And then we have a second from Mr. Thompson. I believe that concludes all business related to item number 4 and 5 of appeals. I thank everybody for coming out tonight and taking your time for this important matter. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to ordinances for adoption. Item number 1, ordinance calendar number 5952, an ordinance to amend the parish code regarding simple cruelty to animals, minimum care standards relative to extreme weather conditions. I'm sorry. Do we need to? Do you want?
I think he said item number 4.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, Mr. Shane?
May I approach?
Yeah, please do.
Forgive me, if I'm out of order,
No, please.
I don't stand corrected. But we have two cases.
Right.
I think you need a vote on the override for each case.
We
And
did
then I
that.
think you need a vote, separate vote, and then you need a separate vote in order to put a resolution to introduce the ordinance for each case.
We did that,
We did that.
yes.
I don't think you had 4 votes.
Well, but we don't need, no, because we're just doing it for introduction. So we don't vote on that. We need a motion, we
Okay,
need the correct.
What I heard as
Here,
an
Mr. Hand,
introduction, I
okay.
thought was only case 5, and I may have been mistaken.
No, we did on item number 4, we did a motion, a second to introduce, and on item number 5, we did the same thing. Is that correct, Mr. Hand?
Thank you.
So it'd be 2 votes and 2 introductions.
Yes, the clerk.
The clerk, can you review the record and make sure that that's correct?
That is correct.
Similar question, that's what I directed to Tim. I think I only made so far one motion to override, but maybe
No,
I
sir.
did.
No, sir, we did a motion.
Okay.
You made the motion to override.
In both the-
And Mr. Thompson seconded it. That was on number 4, with numbers.
Then did I do it for
That
number
was
5?
when Mr. Groby abstained, and Mr. Tanner and Ms. O'Brien were absent. The rest were yays, which is 11. Then you moved to introduce the ordinance, and Mr. Bellisario seconded, and that's all we need because it's just an introduction. Then you moved on to number 5. You made the motion to override the denial. Mr. Thompson seconded. That vote was 11 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 absent. And then you made the motion to introduce with a second again for Mr. Thompson, and there's no vote.
Thank you. I stand corrected on that. Thank you very much.
I believe we've officially concluded all business with item number 4 and item number 5. So, going to ordinances for adoption, item number 1, ordinance calendar number 5952, an ordinance to amend the parish code regarding simple cruelty to animals, minimum care standards relative to extreme weather conditions. This is Mr. Tanner's, he's not present. I believe that Mr. Lorino is going to assist with this.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to remove it from the calendar, please.
And we have a second from Mr. Bellisario. Seeing no other member in the queue, please vote. And that's a motion to remove.
Just patience. Just patience.
Mr. Dean, you didn't read the 3 or 5 page?
Motion passes with 10 yays and 4 absent.
This guy may want to talk on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. On the last matter, or Mr. Scott? We have a speaker card, Mr. Scott, I don't know, what is it? You can't make it. It looks like a BERNIER. Are you present, sir? No. Okay. All right, just making sure. Item number 2, ordinance calendar number 5953, an ordinance to amend the parish code regarding leash law relative to the tethering of animals. This also is by Mr. Tanner. He's not present. I believe Mr. Lorino is going to assist on this matter.
Yeah. Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to amend it and have it reintroduced. Everybody has a copy of the amendment before them.
Okay. And so I need a second. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Bellisario took the second. Seeing no.
Just an
Yes,
amendment.
it's just that's the amendment and
Yes.
reintroduction?
No, that should be just on the amendment.
Just on the
and
amendment.
then reintroduction.
Okay, then we have to do a separate motion. All right, that is the motion for the amendment. Please vote. And Mr. Thompson is a yes on that.
Motion passes, motion is unanimous with 4 absent.
It's taking you off probably, there you
Yeah.
go. Mr. Lorino? And we have the next matter is a reintroducing, correct?
Reintroduce.
So Mr. Lorino makes a motion to reintroduce.
Yes.
We have a second from Mr. Bellisario. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
No.
No vote.
Oh, no vote.
No
Just,
vote.
I'm sorry. No vote, just an introduction. All right. That brings us to item number 3, an ordinance calendar number 5976, an ordinance to extend the 6-month moratorium on property within a portion of voting district 914, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Oh, I move to adopt. Move to adopt.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Bender? All right. So we have the motion to introduce and the second. Seeing no other member in the queue, please vote.
It's Riker's fault.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 absent.
That brings us to item number 4, an ordinance calendar number 5977, an ordinance to extend for an additional 6-month moratorium on the opening of new streets in Angelic Estates. This is Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Teledano.
Question.
Oh, just one.
Just kidding. Move for the introduction. Adoption, rather, excuse me. Adoption.
And that was a second by Mr. Dean.
Yeah. A strong second, I might add, too.
Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson is yea vote. Motion passes, 2 absent. 3 absent, sorry.
Okay, that brings us to item number 5, ordinance calendar number 5978, an ordinance to extend for an additional 6-month moratorium on the property abutting the Louisiana Highway 21 planned corridor for Brewster Road north of Azalea Drive, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
And we have a second by Mr. Thompson. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Bellisario?
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Well, I'm feeling good.
Item number 6, an ordinance calendar number 5979, ordinance establishing no parking zone on DeForest Drive 1-J25, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
Yes, ma'am, so moved.
And we have a second by Mr. Thompson. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
All right, and we have, let's see here. We go to item number 7, ordinance calendar number 5980, an ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory to include Bienvent Road, East Ward 2, District 3. Mr. Thompson.
So moved. Second.
And we have a second by Mr. Teledano. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Stefanczyk?
Mr. Stefanczyk, we need a vote.
His machine broke? Yes.
Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
That brings us to item number 8, ordinance calendar number 5981, an ordinance amending the official planning zoning map to reclassify 144.49 acres from PUD and an A1 to A1? Is that correct?
Just the A1, they're removing the PUD.
Okay, they're removing the PUD. All right, so from the PUD to A1. Ward 1, District 3.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Dean. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Thompson?
Yeah.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to item number 9, ordinance calendar number 5982, an ordinance to declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus property, introduction, or properties. Mr. Lorino?
So moved.
So moved. A second by Mr. Teledano. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And a yes by Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Belisario? Mr. Thompson was a yes. Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Item number 10, ordinance calendar number 5983, an ordinance to authorize the parish government to acquire certain properties for the LA 1077 to LA 21 Connector Road Project, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
So moved, second by Mr. Thompson. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And there's a yes by Mr. Thompson. Any member missing?
Mr. Canulet?
Mr. Canulet, you just... Thank you, Mr. Canulet.
Motion is unanimous with 2 absent.
Gentlemen, we only have 2 more matters here. I know we have a few off the floor. I think we can make it through this. Thank you. Item number 11 is an ordinance, calendar number 5984, an ordinance to amend the 2017 operating budget. Amendment number 14, recommended by the Finance Committee for adoption. So moved by Mr. Lorino, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And we have a yes by Mr. Thompson.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
That brings us to item number 12, ordinance calendar number 5985, an ordinance to amend the 2018 operating budget. Amendment number 4, Finance Committee recommended the adoption. Mr. Lorino.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote. And Mr. Thompson was a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
We move to the discussion of other matters. Number 1 is a motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendations, an ordinance to amend parish code to add brewery and distilleries with tours. Mr. Fitzgerald is making the recommendation, and he so motions for the, and Mr. Dean. Yeah, he had his hand up. Is that, do we need a vote? Yeah. We do need a vote. Okay, and we need a vote to refer. I didn't know if
Mr.
there's a motion
Toledano.
introduction. And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, we have a card. Do we have a card for?
Not for the next,
Okay.
not till the next one.
Not to the next one. All right. Number 3, got it. All right, number 2, a motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendation ordinance amending the Parish Unified Development Code. Mr. Teledano?
So moved.
He has made the motion. Mr. Thompson seconded with a close third by Mr. Belisario. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Excellent job, Red.
Mr. Groby?
Mr. Groby, thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, we have received 1 card on the next matter. Item number 3, a motion to refer to Zoning Commission for recommendation the proposed rezoning of 5.4 acres fronting on Ben Thomas Road and located in the section of 34 Township 8 South, Range 14 East from from HC2 Highway Commercial to A-4 Single Family Residential, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith, is there a motion?
Yes, ma'am, I move to refer.
And Mr. Bender has seconded it. Sir.
Yes, Caller Hernandez. Just want to point out to you, as I have in the past, that what you're about to do is waive fees, which I don't believe we should be waiving any fees at this point in time. The amount of money that I estimate that we're about to lose for this motion on 5.4 acres is $595. $595 is what you're about to lose. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith, further discussion on the matter?
I'm going to leave it alone.
Okay. All right. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Oh, man, I could eat that one.
Oops. Oh, he did leave. Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
That brings us to off-the-floor items. I'll need a motion and a unanimous vote from those present to bring items off the floor. We've got a first by Mr. Canulet, a second by Mr. Belisario. Please vote. And a yes by Mr. Thompson.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Mr. Dean, do you have any additional items from off the floor to add?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
None.
Mr. Thompson?
No.
Mr. Toledano?
Thank you, but no thanks.
Mr. Lorino?
No, thank you.
Mr. Groby?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Canulet?
None.
Mr. Belisario?
None.
Mr. Stefanczyk?
No.
Mr. Bender?
No, no,
Mr.
ma'am.
Smith?
None.
Thank you. The first item is a resolution to appoint Philip Becker to replace Jeffrey Rogers, who resigned, and to appoint Jeff Vale to replace Charles Carr, who resigned, on the Board of Commissioners for St. Tammany Parish Drainage District Number 2. So moved by Mr. Belisario, second by Mr. Bender. Mr. Canulet, were you seconding? You were actually using it to second? No. You have a question. You know, I'm always available to answer your questions at other times if you would like, but I'd be happy to do so now. It is not wanting to cooperate. There you go, Mr. Canulet.
All right, it still ain't on, but are you going to suspend the rules and adopt tonight?
This is not Parish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay.
I'm being told that I don't need to do so.
You don't need
I
to, okay. That works. That works.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Canulet, are you aware of the location of this?
Yeah, I'm good
solely
now.
contained within the district? Okay.
We're good now, we good.
And there are 2 more seats to be put on there, so. All right. Seeing no other member in the queue with any other questions, please vote.
I just like the way you say Thompson.
And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
That brings us to item number 2, a resolution to appoint Brian Swindell to replace Thomas Miller on the Board of Commissioners for St. Tammany Parish Water District Number 3. Mr. Lorino.
So move.
A second by Mr. Toledano. Mr. Canulet, any questions?
I just verbally vote yes.
All right, please vote. And Mr. Thompson is a yes.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
All right, we go to item number 3. It's for introduction, correct? This is just an introduction, so we just need a motion. So I've got. It's a minute. Okay. All right, I don't know why they wrote introduction. Maybe I didn't understand that. All right, item number 3, an ordinance to amend the ordinance CS number 17-3723, 17-3797, and 18-3882, which imposed and extended the moratorium on property within a portion of Bayou Desani Basin and a portion of Flowers Bayou Basin south of I-12. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
And a second by Mr. Canulet. Seeing no member in the queue, please vote.
Yeah, I did. I don't see what
I know, they told me it was for introduction. Or it was for amendment.
Mr. Chairman. Wait, how do I?
do it. So we made the motion to amend, now we're doing the introduction. Okay. Okay, Mr. Dean?
Oops. I'm sorry.
I think we have one more thing to do with
You got one more to do. Introduction.
You need to do, yeah. But
Mr. Thompson, are you yes as well?
okay. Yeah, we can go. Do we need to go back? No. Okay.
Motion was unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dean? Did you have something more on
No.
that? You sure?
I didn't.
Okay. I think we need an introduction. Is it a motion or finish with that item? Okay, so we're done. All right. That would be a motion to adjourn. I believe there's no further business. Mr. Belzer, Mr. Stefanski.